A ruined battlefield falls silent as one exhausted fighter collapses among the wreckage, while battered survivors cheer behind another hunter celebrating a victory paid for in blood. Back in the devastated city, medics treat the wounded while families cling to whoever returned, where a young civilian awkwardly addresses Tenma as his uncle, only to get corrected mid-sentence, because F-rank hunter Tenma Tsukishiro prefers Big Brother, or at minimum being called by name, and the unawakened Kyoya Hidaka questions whether hitting civilians is really part of hunter etiquette. Tenma may have zero talent or skills, but his nephew still considers him a real hunter, especially beside SSS-rank Kakeru Amamiya, whose ridiculous power represents everything that title can mean. 20 years earlier, monsters poured through sudden gates and turned entire cities into feeding grounds, until the system awakened chosen hunters with special powers and gave humanity a fighting chance, allowing these newly empowered warriors to drag the world away from extinction's doorstep. Among them, 11 overwhelmingly powerful champions became the final 11, humanity's ultimate emergency squad. Yet the highest-ranked monsters, known as demons, casually outscaled even those elite defenders, and relentless demonic assaults eventually shoved civilization back against its final defensive line. With 6 champions already dead and the demon army closing in, the survivors faced checkmate. But Kakeru refused to fold, declaring that humanity still had one last chance, a desperate way to undo the catastrophe instead of merely surviving its next wave, as the black-haired champion raised a glowing golden hourglass containing their final gamble, and activated it because apparently their apocalypse still had a hidden New Game Plus option. The unique item return point, capable of opening a gate 20 years into the past. Only one traveler could pass through that gate, carrying humanity's impossible save file into the past, specifically 20 years back, before the demons finished preparing their invasion, leaving one brutal question: who should go? When the desperate crowd unanimously demanded Kakeru Amamiya, their strongest final 11 hunter. Nearby, Tenma admitted returning sounded nice, then asked what Kyoya would do with that chance, and Kyoya knew neither an unawakened civilian nor an F-rank could regress. But he wanted his parents back, a quiet answer that left Tenma patting Kyoya's head instead of cracking another joke, while thousands kept chanting Amamiya's name, apparently voting with all the subtlety of a raid alarm. Kakeru had resisted the burden, but another survivor asked whether he had finally accepted it, because only he could travel back, defeat the demons, and rescue the doomed world, leaving him with one command: change their future no matter what the mission demanded. Before he could answer, Kakeru spotted danger cutting through the stronghold's defenses, shouted for everyone to dodge, and turned the time travel briefing into an emergency scramble as a colossal black projectile plunged toward the packed platform from above, forcing the black-haired champion to throw up a radiant pink barrier, which caught the impact but buckled under pressure as civilians screamed beneath it, until the shield erupted in a blinding burst, scattering fragments across the defensive line. She stared in disbelief. The barrier had broken far too easily, and the enormous projectile punched through anyway, descending faster than anyone could respond, straight toward Kyoya, who could only scream for his uncle as the mass closed in, until Tenma slammed into him from the side, shoving the kid clear of the impact, sending Kyoya tumbling across the floor while his uncle remained directly beneath the descending mass. And as the terrified young man screamed, Tenma answered with one final smile, before the projectile crashed down, swallowing the F-rank hunter in a violent blast. Kyoya hit the ground hard, barely managing to whisper for his uncle, then lifted his bloodied face and shouted again when no answer came from the rubble, his voice echoing across the crater as he searched through smoke and wreckage, until a gravely injured Tenma reminded him, with impeccable timing, to say "Big Brother." At that exact moment, Return Point's golden gate flared behind the wounded hunter, while the system announced that the distortion in time was about to be corrected and confirmed the unique item had already been used. No refunds, no carefully selected hero. Instead, it locked onto F-rank hunter Tenma Tsukishiro and sent him 20 years backward, pulling his broken body into the light before anyone could stop the accidental regression, as the roaring pillar consumed the platform and carried its thoroughly unqualified passenger away. When the light vanished, only a smoking crater remained at humanity's final stronghold, leaving Kakeru and the black-haired champion staring in horror, asking who had entered the gate. The answer hit Kakeru, and his expression said their plan had gone catastrophically off-script. Inside the regression, the system detected a causal distortion, verified fatal flaws, and scheduled Deus Ex Machina in 30 minutes. Tenma woke alone in a forest, realizing an F-rank had stolen the mission meant to stop demons, before a red window confirmed the regression had succeeded and told him to check his status, where the 24-year-old, level 2 F-rank found 0 traits, 0 skills, and numbers that made no sense. Seeing the impossible status made the regression feel painfully real, and after the shock settled, Tenma accepted he was standing 20 years in the past, only for a nearby shriek to interrupt the world's least qualified time traveler and send him sprinting toward the sound before caution could finish loading. He ducked behind a tree, peering into the clearing without exposing himself, where armed goblins stalked through the brush, axes ready and patience non-existent. That confirmed he was inside a gate, and even with future knowledge the creatures terrified him, because escaping meant finding the exit or clearing the system quest, neither realistic without a single skill. Worse, the red countdown showed only 24 minutes and 33 seconds remaining, when a blade suddenly flashed past the goblins before they could spot their hidden observer, leaving the monsters enough time for one confused grunt, before an unseen strike tore through them and dropped bodies across the clearing. Blood sprayed toward Tenma's tree, making this supposed rescue look aggressively unfriendly, but he still assumed another hunter had arrived and considered begging for help, until the attacker emerged as a towering green warrior wielding two bloodied swords, and one cold blue eye erased every comforting theory Tenma had left. A survived goblin glanced around the tree, exposing the hiding place at the worst moment, while memory supplied the newcomer's identity. Chulane, the twin sword wielder with otherworldly techniques, a named monster infamous for killing countless hunters, somehow appearing here years too early. With danger charging straight past him, Tenma could only cover his face and scream for help. His scream drew a blonde hunter racing in, warning that someone was slaughtering monsters and hunters indiscriminately, only for Chulane to step from the carnage, twin blades dripping and attention fixed on fresh prey. Tenma recognized exactly how bad that silence was, especially when the named monster grinned like the gate had just delivered takeout, then launched forward with both swords raised before either human could reposition. The blonde hunter barely caught the first strike on his own blade, but Tenma tackled him aside as the heavier follow-up carved through their previous position, and Chulane's impact detonated the ground, hurling both fugitives across the shattered clearing. They landed together in the crater, bruised but still attached to all essential parts, giving the F-rank just enough breath to realize survival now required immediate movement. He grabbed the stranger's wrist before another attack could reach them, yelled one beautifully uncomplicated order, "Run," and dragged him into the forest, while Chulane recovered from the smashed earth and watched his targets escape, a growl promising their cardio session had only entered phase 2. The pair sprinted until both were gasping, though Tenma already wanted a break, cursing the stamina of his younger F-rank body while studying the unfamiliar hunter beside him. Then a crest on the stranger's shoulder caught his attention, and recognition landed. The emblem belonged to the Night Crow Guild. When questioned, the blonde hunter confirmed his guild had secured this gate, then asked why Tenma was inside, triggering a grim realization. This was the location of the infamous Night Crow Guild incident. The remembered disaster was an F-rank gate where a named monster appeared without warning and annihilated Night Crow, and even the rescue squad was wiped out. So Tenma pushed through the pain and focused on escaping fast. He asked the blonde hunter for a spare weapon so they could escape together, and the stranger opened his inventory, apparently trusting the plan for one whole second, before Chulane's blade crossed the space between them while the menu was still open. The hunter looked down in confusion as a deep wound spread across his chest, and blood splashed Tenma's face, confirming their tiny alliance had ended brutally early. With no weapon delivered, Tenma stamped down on Chulane's sword to stop the next swing, then seized the monster's wrist with both hands, betting everything on desperate leverage. But Chulane ripped free and launched another attack with enough force to delete that idea. The impact caught Tenma cleanly, blasting the breath from his lungs and sent him crashing through trees while splintered trunks followed him down, until one final collision shattered a trunk and threw his broken body onward, leaving him sprawled motionless on the forest floor as debris rained around him. One blow had already pushed the F-rank near death, and Chulane calmly approached through the clearing to finish what he started, while the red system window announced only 4 seconds remained before Deus Ex Machina activated. A floating countdown ticked from 3 to 2 as Tenma wondered what the numbers meant, regretting that he had stolen Kakaru's regression only to die almost immediately, because someone like him had reached the past, and the final second disappeared. Tenma wept as humanity's last chance seemed to end with one embarrassingly short regression, but Deus Ex Machina executed successfully, replacing his death screen with a cascade of system corrections, and granting the EX rank trait Talentless Adjustment instead of letting the timeline discard its broken traveler. Its effect multiplied skill acquisition, growth rates, and every experience reward by 100,000. Tenma reread the number through tiers. Neither 100 nor 1,000 but 100,000. Even his severe damage triggered endurance and poured 100,000 experience points into it, causing level-up notices to erupt around him faster than the system could stack them, until endurance hit its maximum level in the span of a single breath. Across his entire first life, he had never raised that skill even once. Yet now its maxed effect reduced damage and kept him moving after a fatal wound. His supposedly finished body obeyed, gripping the fallen hunter's sword from the dirt, just as Chulane swung again, expecting another effortless execution, only for Tenma to brace the blade and block, shaky legs somehow holding. The trait explained that causality had perfectly adjusted itself around his lack of talent, meaning reality balanced its books by overcompensating the most bottom-tier hunter alive. And remembering Kyoya alone in that doomed future turned survival into something far more personal. If this impossible build could let him see the kid again and prevent the demon's victory, he would weaponize every point of that 100,000 times growth and rewrite the future, swearing he would change everything as power surged through his body and sword. Talentless adjustment confirmed the bargain, drastically increased skill chances, and every experience gain multiplied 100,000 times. Reading Endurance's effects, Tenma realized surviving one enemy attack had granted and instantly maxed a skill, and decided that absurd engine might actually carry him out alive. Chulane answered the new optimism with a growl, unimpressed by tutorial discoveries, then surged forward and brought both blades down in another ruthless combination. This time Tenma met the first arc with his borrowed sword, and the clash activated Talentless Adjustment, feeding 100,000 experience into his fresh technique. Swordsmanship appeared at level 1 before he could even process the notification, then climbed through repeated upgrades while Chulane remained directly in front of him, until the skill slammed into level 10, another instant maximum. Armed with knowledge his hands had never practiced, he countered and knocked the named monster backward, sending Chulane skidding across the clearing as a sharp pressure trail split the ground. The stunned warrior growled, finally treating his F-rank target like an actual opponent, while Tenma confirmed swordsmanship had maxed out and silently recalculated his impossible build. Most hunters either awakened with a skill or earned it through brutal training, but his trait ignored both, and level 10 swordsmanship rewired even how he gripped the weapon, turning basics into instinct. A sudden whistle cut through his analysis, signaling movement somewhere outside his vision, so he searched the clearing and managed only one confused question: where? Before Chulane dropped from overhead, both blades raised for a crushing ambush. The monster slammed into his guard at point-blank range, driving him down, and the collision cratered the earth around them as Tenma absorbed another punishing impact. Even with the new skills, Tenma's battered body protested every block, so endurance and swordsmanship activated together, turning pain tolerance and technique into one desperate defense. He forced out a scream and pushed against the crushing pressure, finally breaking the bind and throwing Chulane backward with a heavy counter. The named monster skidded away, but the distance bought only seconds, because Chulane rose laughing, delighted that his prey had learned to fight back. Tenma felt the overwhelming combat gap and knew endless defense would never close it, as the twin sword wielder twisted into another vicious spinning assault, sending overlapping arcs at him faster than ordinary sight could track. There would be no end unless he read the next move, so he concentrated completely, and Talentless Adjustment rewarded the attempt by granting perception at level 1. The usual flood of multiplied experience instantly climbed through every intermediate level, maxing perception before Chulane's attack could even finish approaching. The monster poured more power into the charge, surrounding both blades with violent energy, then descended through a blue-purple torrent meant to overwhelm every possible escape. But Tenma's field of vision transformed, slowing the chaos into readable motion until he could see Chulane, both swords, and the exact trajectory of every strike. The path was obvious now, letting him step inside the attack instead of retreating, catch one blade at its weakest angle, and redirect its lethal edge, before a clean counter launched Chulane through the air and reversed their positions. Chulane hit the ground below while Tenma recovered his stance above the broken clearing, and max-level perception expanded his awareness beyond the monster to every tree, leaf, and current of wind. No wonder the skill ranked near the top. It made the battlefield feel transparent, leaving him to wonder whether this was how high-ranking hunters always experienced combat. Below, Chulane rolled onto his feet with predatory balance, and the returning grin suggested he had another unpleasant mechanic ready. He hurled both curved blades outward, attached lines sweeping them around from opposite sides, then spun the weapons into wide intersecting arcs that swallowed the available space. Tenma raised his sword against the crossing strike, but the angles wrapped around his guard, forcing him to twist away as sharpened afterimages chased every movement. The two edges snapped together inches from him, turning one miss into another immediate threat, while the lingering sword paths multiplied until he was surrounded by black crescents. He could not block the entire pattern, so instinct demanded more distance, and one desperate step backward became another system-approved training session. Talentless Adjustment granted footwork at level 1 as the dodge began, then spammed upgrades through the full sequence before his heel finished leaving the ground, maxing footwork and injecting perfect movement into a body that had never trained it. The result launched Tenma across the clearing, safely beyond the blades by an absurd margin. He had not meant to jump that far. Power scaling had officially misplaced the brakes. Across the distance, Chulane growled and tightened his grip, refusing to let the prey escape. Now that his steps felt weightless, Tenma steadied the borrowed blade and prepared to test both skills together, activating swordsmanship and footwork simultaneously as his body shifted into a combat stance. He exploded forward with the conviction that for once, he could actually do this, meeting Chulane's guard at close range and driving steel against the monster's crossed weapons. Both fighters tore across the clearing, each exchange stretching into a blur of white arcs, while the named monster snarled, no longer amused by the supposed F-rank. Tenma flashed a tired grin and asked how the upgraded version felt, then pressed closer, matching Chulane's speed through every punch, blade, and pivot. Their next collision burst outward in a shockwave that shredded the surrounding brush, yet neither backed away, trading overlapping strikes while footwork kept him inside the storm. Chulin roared as another clean counter broke through his rhythm, and Tenma drove the momentum upward, throwing both combatants into a violent aerial clash whose expanding pressure dome swallowed the clearing and shook the entire gate. Outside, a blonde woman waited beside the blue portal with her phone in hand, already sighing like rescuing strangers from beginner gates was personal disrespect. C-rank hunter Yuna Shiragain complained that only an idiot could get stranded inside an F-rank gate, but the association's manual said time was up, so she reluctantly accepted the assignment. The Hunter Association connection remained open as she prepared to enter, and a small system window formed over her hand, confirming the rescue operation. Because Nightcrow had exceeded its clear time despite this being ordinary F-rank work for an average beginner guild. Yuna assumed the missing hunters were probably drinking inside, then raised one hand with practiced irritation, and used level 2 spatial teleportation to shoot through the blue gate. The transition dropped her inside with a grunt, where bodies, broken trees, and blood immediately replaced every theory about lazy beginners. She surveyed the destruction stretching from the entrance, realizing Nightcrow had made an impossible mess, then called for the guild members and demanded to know where everyone was. Silence answered, forcing the rescue hunter to listen for movement deeper inside, until the scale of the shattered forest and enormous craters finally registered. No ordinary F-rank fight could produce that much damage, which meant something was badly wrong, and two distant figures standing amid the wreckage became her only lead. One was the wounded green-named monster, still upright beside his bloody twin swords, while the other was an equally battered Tenma, gripping his borrowed blade and refusing to fall. A dense aura rolled from the monster despite his injuries, stopping Yuna cold before she could announce herself or join the fight. The pressure made a C-rank tremble, leaving her unable to believe any goblin produced it, as the wounded opponents stared each other down through the settling dust. Then the monster spoke human language and formally introduced himself as Kusushulan, shocking Yuna further, as he acknowledged the debt created by their battle, and promised Tenma he would repay it while the F-rank kept his sword raised. Black smoke swallowed Kushulan as the named monster started to withdraw, and Tenma charged through the cloud after him, blade raised for one last exchange, but the haze thinned over empty ground, confirming his wounded opponent had escaped. Yuna emerged from the dust asking what in the world she had just witnessed, only to hear Tenma's knees buckle as his borrowed strength finally ran out. She rushed over and asked whether he was conscious, then identified herself as the Association rescue hunter while staring at injuries no F-rank should survive. Still dazed, Tenma ignored her questions about the talking goblin until she demanded he pull himself together. He finally began answering with enough dramatic hesitation to make the exhausted C-rank lean closer, then called himself her lifesaver, flashing a grin through all the blood. Yuna barely processed the claim before he warned her not to forget it and took one heroic step away before collapsing, because presentation could not replace remaining health. Later, surrounded by Nightcrow's covered casualties, she wondered how anyone could report this disaster. Tenma eventually woke in a hospital bed, bandaged, alive, and unsure where regression had landed him, then pulled back the privacy curtain to inspect the quiet ward, where other recovering patients confirmed he had returned to the real world outside the gate. A familiar blue status window appeared at his touch, and the accumulated evidence finally convinced him that the regression had truly happened. In his first life, he gained no skills and reached level 6, but one battle now listed multiple maxed abilities. His core status remained insulting. Age 24, level 2, rank F, but talentless adjustment was real, and he understood that this trait alone had let him fight Kuchulain as an equal. Tenma opened the full trait description and noticed one locked special effect beneath the multiplier, a mystery tempting him until the visible explanation pulled his attention back. The 100,000 times experience bonus was literally a balance patch for a man born with 0 talent, which made him wonder whether Kakeru would have received every final 11 ability if he had regressed instead. Probably not. Someone overwhelmingly powerful from Awakening would never need this particular correction, so Tenma stopped theory crafting and focused on the only player the past had actually received. A voice interrupted. Yuna had entered the room and noticed he was finally awake, saying doctors expected him to remain unconscious for at least another week. That reminded him he owned no healing skill, at least, not one he remembered acquiring, until the system displayed max-level natural recovery, which supernaturally enhanced his healing. Apparently lying unconscious counted as training, while Yuna repeatedly asked why he ignored his savior. Tenma responded by asking who she was, earning a sharp reminder that they met inside the gate. She introduced herself as Yuna Shiragain, C-rank association hunter, and said she rescued him after his collapse. The name brought back both the gate and Kushulain, the monster tied to Nightcrow's massacre. In the original timeline, that same creature was supposed to slaughter the Association investigation team. When Yuna asked whether his story was true, Tenma denied nothing and let her admit how much she believed. A Nightcrow survivor had testified for him, describing the insanely strong goblin called Chulain, and the unexpected witness gave Tenma quiet proof that this timeline had already changed. Yuna explained that the survivor was exactly where the official problem began, because the association refused to recognize an F rank defeating that goblin, regardless of the testimony. Tenma said he did not mind losing official credit and headed for discharge, while Yuna chased him, baffled that he would surrender an overnight path to fame. Public attention was dangerous. He knew demons would eventually emerge from gates and rule this world, and Ku Chulin's misplaced appearance suggested their hidden agents might notice whoever disrupted the invasion. So he left the hospital before Yuna could finish demanding answers, though she cornered him long enough to ask why he had entered Night Crow's gate at all. Tenma supplied the least heroic motive available, money, claiming he only planned to steal mana stones the guild had dropped inside. Yuna watched him leave and labeled him a complete weirdo, which was honestly the safer reputation. Back on crowded city streets, the regressor blended into ordinary pedestrian traffic, passing loud promotions and everyday arguments that belong to a world still functioning, alongside students laughing without any idea what the future would demand from them. To Tenma, this lively era existed before everything fell apart, a second chance rendered in mundane details. He returned to the same aging apartment building he remembered, unlocked his door, and stepped into a life the apocalypse had not yet erased. The familiar interior welcomed him without alarms, monsters, or system windows, and nothing had changed, making home at last feel stranger than any gate. He dropped onto the couch with a long breath, finally allowing his body to stop moving, stared at the ceiling, and let the silence catch up with 20 years of memory, then asked the only question that mattered: how could he prevent humanity's extinction? Normally, the association's heroes would be mobilizing to uncover the truth behind Night Crow, but Tenma remembered he had resolved the incident, erasing the very event that once summoned them. That contradiction sent him back to the system, searching for what regression had really altered, until he realized the past began changing when talentless adjustment appeared, and only he remembered the original line. So the answer was becoming stronger than anyone and preventing disasters that accelerated the demon's world-ending schedule. Fortunately, his first life included religiously reading Hunter magazines, leaving a rough archive of important events, though exact dates and details had degraded across 20 brutal years. A quiet possibility clicked when he considered how dramatically perception had transformed his senses, because if one max skill could reshape vision, another might repair memory just as thoroughly. He decided to force a memory-related ability by overclocking his brain, starting with an advanced professional textbook on quantum mechanics, the natural enemy of confidence. The plan was simple: read something brutally difficult until the system acknowledged serious mental effort. Several pages later, every formula still looked like the alphabet had declared war, and Tenma collapsed over the book, admitting he did not understand a single word. He nearly abandoned the experiment and asked what he was even doing, when the system finally detected high-level intellectual activity, apparently grading effort on emotional damage. Talentless adjustment answered with intelligence and the familiar avalanche of instant upgrades, maxing the skill as Tenma laughed, because somehow the ridiculous plan had actually worked. He opened the new ability's description to see whether it solved memory. Instead, intelligence boosted magic proficiency, magic power, and mana, a useful gain, just not perception-level transformation. Then a better method appeared: combine intelligence and perception and deliberately reconstruct the past. So Tenma sat upright, placed the textbook before him, and cleared every distraction. He activated both max skills simultaneously, turning thought and awareness inward, with one command to himself: remember everything built inside that dying world. Scenes returned in sequence: Nightcrow, Yuna, Kakaru, demons, and humanity's ruined final defense, spreading through his mind like endless film reels pulled from sealed storage. The system granted memory search and rapidly stacked it from level 1 to 10, unlocking perfect recall of memories buried inside his subconscious. The flood left Tenma flushed and trembling as 2 lifetimes reorganized themselves behind his eyes, but when it settled he smiled and announced that everything was finally in place. His first practical test was painfully mundane, remembering information needed at a nearby bank, where the recovered password opened his phone while the clock read mid-afternoon. At the counter, he successfully unlocked the bank account that first life amnesia had buried, only to discover 2,782 yen. Memory restored, finances still running the poverty bill. He collected a cheap cafe order with whatever dignity remained, took a long drink, and processed that perfect recall could not generate rent. Still, sitting outside beneath a peaceful sky made him feel genuinely alive again, and clarified the mission: locate the demons hiding in the city before they grew stronger. His first target would be the growth demon, the earliest one to reveal itself to humanity. But before he could move, a call arrived from Hiroki Gondo. The caller's name triggered memory search, but Tenma still answered cautiously and asked who was speaking. Hiroki Gondo greeted him with profanity and announced their team was already harvesting mana stones, then ordered him to reach a gate in Sakyo, Shichijo City immediately. The restored memory explained everything. As an F rank, Tenma survived by filling vacancies in understaffed raid groups, usually while impatient teammates shouted for movement, so refusing work meant losing income. He tried anyway, claiming he lacked enough money even for a taxi, then stood from the cafe as Hiroki kept pushing from the other end. A cab arrived regardless, proving someone had solved the transportation problem without consulting him, and Tenma opened his status during the ride, amused that Hiroki sent one after the abrupt hang-up. The full list of max-level skills still looked absurd, but every entry was ready. Soon the taxi carried him beyond the city and into the mountains surrounding the assigned gate, where a mixed raid team waited before a swirling black portal. Scanning the crowd, he realized this routine job offered plenty of chances to test his upgraded body. A green-haired leader immediately complained that Tenma was late, identifying the man as Kuki Kazama, D-rank master of the Kausei Guild, who blamed him for risking the bonus. When Kuki challenged him, Tenma's calm stare accidentally registered as a threat, granting intimidation, though no experience boost followed against a higher-ranked target. The new skill reduced target readiness but only affected opponents at his rank or lower, useless against D-rank Kuki. Rather than argue, Tenma asked the guildmaster to lend him some usable equipment, and Kuki ordered a white-haired subordinate to hand over whatever spare gear they had. Kuki led the party through the portal while two subordinates whispered that their boss seemed unusually nervous, then erased a goblin with one brutal strike, reminding everyone why he remained raid leader. The team advanced through a dim cave littered with slain monsters. Their formation relaxed after the easy opening, while the white-haired subordinate ordered Tenma to hurry and finish cleanup duty. He obeyed beside a brown-haired porter, playing the compliant F rank while studying every corpse, then planted a borrowed dagger into a goblin and tested whether harvesting counted as trainable work. The porter dismantled another body, unaware Tenma was watching the technique instead of the loot. Tenma asked for a spare dagger, and the startled worker found one, passing it over without realizing he had just donated another skill trigger. One careful cut opened the monster while perception guided hands through anatomy he had never learned, making the porter stare as the supposed amateur worked with sudden precision. Recovering loot granted butchering, and multiplied experience immediately marched the skill through every level, until max-level technique produced a perfectly processed piece of monster meat in his palm. The brown-haired hunter could only whisper in disbelief while Tenma inspected the clean result. Satisfied with the test, he calmly told the stunned worker they should keep moving. Deeper inside, the cave floor grew crowded with goblins and wolf monsters the main team had dropped, and Kuki's group paused to assess how much material remained worth collecting. The white-haired hunter urged everyone onward, but the porter wondered whether they should focus on gathering, as Tenma quietly harvested a large wolf corpse behind them with one practiced motion. Butchering rewarded him with a perfectly preserved F-rank demon wolf hide. Clean loot, 0 wasted durability. A second notification added high-quality F-rank wolf fangs to Tenma's growing haul, then the party finally moved on, leaving the cleaned corpses behind. The porter decided today's clear felt unusually smooth, blaming previous delays on Tenma's old pace, and asked how Tsukishiro had suddenly become so fast and precise. Before an answer came, a knife-wielding goblin leader stepped from the darkness ahead, growling as the two collectors halted without the main combat team nearby. Tenma noticed one monster had escaped the earlier sweep and suspected this was the guard leader, but memory confirmed something better. This ambush was exactly the event he had been waiting for. The porter screamed a warning as more movement gathered in the tunnel, then panicked that a talentless F-rank who could not kill one goblin was their only protection. Their attacker grinned, clearly agreeing with that insulting character sheet, and raised one hand in a deliberate signal to the surrounding shadows. 4 more goblins emerged behind him, turning a routine cleanup pair into a 5-on-2 encounter. The porter collapsed mentally, convinced one F-rank against 5 monsters meant certain defeat, while the leader charged with its dagger raised and the pack rushed behind. Tenma answered by activating intimidation, his eyes burning red as the threat finally found valid targets. A crushing black aura filled the tunnel and swallowed every goblin's momentum, forcing the leader's confident expression into wide-eyed fear before its attack could land. Because the monsters matched his rank, intimidation gained multiplied experience and began leveling rapidly, reaching level 5 as one terrified goblin dropped its weapon and collapsed backward. The fear effect rippled through the remaining pack, raising intimidation as bodies hit the ground, until only the armed leader remained standing among 4 unconscious followers and their dropped weapons. It forced out one stubborn growl, refusing to surrender despite shaking legs, while Tenma privately admitted even this oddly conditional skill had impressive results. A sound behind him made the regressor glance toward his supposed witness, but the porter had fainted from sheer terror, conveniently missing the entire display. With secrecy handled, Tenma stopped worrying about anyone watching and prepared a controlled test, activating intelligence and agility together as the goblin leader raised its dagger. He burst forward in a spiraling sequence of cuts, using speed and analysis to overwhelm the monster, then announced one small experiment while the leader barely tracked his movements. Repeated strikes exploded across the tunnel in a dense red storm, leaving the goblin wounded, exhausted, and somehow still upright on its blade. Tenma hoped combat might grant another ability like before, but advanced skills required genuine effort because talentless adjustment accelerated basic learning without deleting his original lack of talent. He clicked his tongue, annoyed that the cosmic cheat code still included terms and conditions, as the desperate leader launched one final overhead slash. Tenma stepped past it and cut through the monster in a single clean counter, which activated the EX trait's experience multiplier the moment the kill registered. 100,000 times the normal reward flooded his status, stacking level up notices around him, until the former level 2 F rank abruptly reached level 20 and could only stare. Only then did Tenma realize Kuchulain's escape awarded nothing, while one goblin captain's experience slammed him into a lock. The system explained that level 20 was a cap until he completed an awakening quest, a personalized trial appearing every 20 levels, with excess experience converted into points while rank and level remained frozen. Those points could purchase items from the system shop, turning overflow experience into a separate economy. The sudden red notification pulsed against his hands, making Tenma recoil from the aggressive tutorial delivery. No awakening quest appeared yet, so he decided to wait and choose purchases later. First, he woke the unconscious porter and announced it was time to butcher the monsters, leaving the groggy hunter rubbing his head and struggling to remember the ambush. Then the porter spotted 5 goblins scattered across the tunnel and froze again. Recognizing both the captain and the other fighters he assumed had surrounded them, Tenma casually claimed someone else killed them and redirected the conversation toward harvesting. Together they began dismantling the bodies, with the porter accepting the answer because loot demanded attention. While the worker focused on a corpse, Tenma quietly reopened his status, scrolling through the blue interface to inspect everything the sudden level jump had changed. The screen listed his expanding level 10 skill collection beneath an officially F-rank profile, but the most important detail remained level 20, visibly locked. Since the awakening quest still had not appeared, he planned to keep training while hunting demons, until another red window confirmed he had reached the absolute maximum for F-rank. Then the system warned that his awakening quest difficulty would increase, attaching an undisclosed reward, and Tenma stared at the message, asking what exactly that dangerous wording meant. The unexplained warning convinced Tenma this was bad, even by system window standards, while the porter sat nearby, still recovering and watching him kneel among goblin corpses. His silent stare labeled Tenma an impressive, hopeless necrophile. Fair optics, terrible context. The red panel finally revealed trait evolution. Talentless adjustment would undergo a limit break with several upgrades. This was no standard awakening quest, and the reward could fundamentally rewrite his growth engine, raising every skill cap by 1, boosting per-level stats 1.2 times, and unlocking the shop of causality reversal. Combined with promotion to D rank, the clear would deliver a massive power spike, but the objective was brutal. Subjugate a demon within 3 days at a specific gate. If the original timeline held, that target would be the growth demon, a future calamity destined to trample humanity. A smaller blue window interrupted the ominous profile, confusing Tenma with a separate reward. When the porter asked whether he was leaving, Tenma confirmed and headed toward the exit. Because talentless adjustment provided quest equipment, the system awarded a special rare weapon box. He opened the box before leaving, curious what a rare weapon meant at F rank, and white light erupted around him as the sealed item began materializing. A long silver sword formed in his hand, replacing borrowed guild steel with something unmistakably personal. The system identified it as Soul Predator, a special rare weapon now bound to his quest. At sunset, the raid team emerged through the portal carrying harvested materials and no further casualties. The porter called out his departure to Kuki, who dismissed him after acknowledging the day's work. Several teammates waved goodbye, their mood lighter than the guild's entrance suggested. Walking away with a new sword and deadline, Tenma remembered Kyoya should now be 6 years old. Tenma checked his bank account and found Kuki had deposited 50,000 yen for the raid, far above the 35,000 he expected, so he asked whether the guild had miscalculated. Kuki said the agency fee was separate and added a bonus because Tenma's work kept everything running smoothly. The guild master thanked him, promised future contact, and left with his team. Tenma reflected that this world was still a dumpster fire, yet strength already stopped people from looking down on him. Then his stomach interrupted the philosophy, reminding him that regression had not patched hunger. Newly paid, he decided to grab something before chasing demons or lost family. Hiroki deposited another 4,500 yen but proudly announced he had deducted the taxi fare, earning an immediate curse from Tenma, who considered this friendship an aggressive subscription service. That evening, he entered a brightly lit supermarket to spend part of his modest fortune. Fresh broccoli stopped him cold, and he inhaled the scent like it was premium loot because ordinary produce became an impossible luxury after the apocalypse destroyed supply and agriculture. Someone approached from behind while he stood emotionally invested in vegetables, revealing Yuna Shiragain in glasses and casual clothes, far removed from her association uniform. She asked whether he had been ordered under surveillance. He countered that he was simply grocery shopping. When Tenma explained the broccoli moment, Yuna admitted someone needed to keep an eye on this strange man. Her face suddenly seemed familiar for a reason unrelated to their gate encounter. So memory search opened the correct reel and pulled an older image from his subconscious. The recovered scene showed Yuna standing behind a pale, silver-haired woman Tenma remembered clearly, prompting one careful question. Did she have an older sister named Yuki Shirogane? Yuna jolted and demanded how a stranger knew about her sister, while memory search supplied the answer. Yuki Shirogane became the Infinite Archer, one of the final 11. She was remembered as humanity's hope, an elite fighter surrounded by endless arrows, and as the Goblin Slaughterer, a title born after goblins killed her younger sister in the original timeline. Tenma realized that victim had been Yuna, whose survival at Night Crow had already disrupted Yuki's future. Unable to explain any of that, he claimed he knew Yuki because she was beautiful, then added the sisters looked alike, making Yuna assume he was attempting the world's clumsiest flirt. His actual interest was astral movement, Yuki's technique that might help against the growth demon. So Tenma asked for Yuna's number, and her flustered suspicion climbed another level. He clarified that romance was not the goal. He only needed to ask about certain things. Then he invoked the life debt Yuna supposedly owed him, leaving her no graceful escape. She surrendered her phone, and they exchanged contact information beside the produce aisle. Yuna typed with enough fury to set an imaginary fire around her, while Tenma saved the number and quietly celebrated a useful connection. She stormed away, furious he made her look foolish, while he wisely stayed several steps behind. The next day, the regressor waited near a city bus stop, already searching for combat instruction. He summoned the rare sword from yesterday and studied the blade while waiting. Soul Predator was actually super rare, carrying 30 attack power and unlocking special functions by absorbing souls. That tier exceeded ordinary rare gear, but no weapon alone could answer the growth demon's abilities, so Tenma followed simple logic. Chefs teach cooking, and skilled swordsmen teach swordsmanship. That logic brought him to Kirishima Dojo, an Akihabara sword school carrying the name he remembered, and Tenma stepped through the entrance after politely announcing himself. The doors were already open, allowing him to follow the quiet hallway inside while he reviewed the problem. Defeating a demon required one decisive skill capable of massive damage. The swordsman living here was remembered for cutting mountains and splitting the heavens with a single strike, a beacon for humanity whose overwhelming power repeatedly produced what survivors called miracles. That future legend was the sword saint, Taiyu Kirishima, one of the doomed era's greatest fighters. Present-day Taiyu, however, asked for a break after another visitor appeared early in the morning, and his bare foot stopped directly before Tenma in the dim reception room. The blue-haired swordsman approached with unmistakable celebrity confidence, scattering autograph papers around his guest before Tenma could explain why he came. Taiyu casually yawned, already treating the visit like another routine fan encounter, then asked whether Tenma was a fan, which was technically easier than discussing regression. With a wide smile and pen ready, he demanded to know where the autograph belonged. Memory search replayed the Sword Saint's future technique instead, revealing power bright enough to erase a horizon, released through one perfect draw as the blade descended with absolute control. That strike parted the heavens and cleaved a mountain, leaving the battlefield divided behind him. Taiyu's future strength was undeniably flawless, but Tenma's memory hesitated over the man himself, because the present swordsman laughed loudly and assumed his newest admirer desperately wanted a signature. He even declared he would save the world, promoting himself before Destiny had finished the casting process. Tenma compared Taiyu's swagger with the future title, and decided the current man was worse than the rumors. That future ended mysteriously. The Sword Saint died soon after rumors spread, though nobody knew the cause. Back in the present, Taiyu offered to sign his guests back, fully committed to the wrong interpretation. Tenma ignored the performance, politely requested guidance, and surprised the self-appointed celebrity. Taiyu brightened at the prospect of a disciple and complained he should have simply said so, making Tenma reconsider everything. They sat among abandoned autograph sheets where the dojo resembled a fan club warehouse more than sacred training ground. Taiyu confessed that for the past month he had thought about nothing but autographs and somehow ended here. He had only registered as a hunter and completed no missions, then asked how Tenma found him. The question sharpened as the blue-haired swordsman leaned forward, suddenly suspicious. Tenma swallowed, unable to reveal perfect memories of the future Sword Saint. Fortunately, Taiyu supplied his own answer. Tenma saw his technique during the measurement exam and fell in love. He laughed at that imaginary conquest, apparently immune to the possibility of being wrong. Tenma agreed, identified himself as a hunter, and asked to learn whichever skill Taiyu recommended. Memory search returned to a future night when the drunk Sword Saint had answered that exact question. Taiyu called the technique simple, learnable by anyone, and foundational to every form of swordsmanship. When Tenma had failed to recognize it, the swordsman could barely believe his ignorance. The answer was straight line slash, the most basic attack hiding beneath Taiyu's impossible power. Back in the dojo, Tenma requested that same technique, and his prospective teacher agreed. Taiyu selected a wooden practice sword from the wall rack, then handed it over and told his new student to try holding it. Before Tenma could properly close his fingers around the wooden sword, Taiyu pulled it away and pronounced him hopeless, claiming he possessed absolutely no talent. Tenma protested he had not even touched it, but the master trusted eyesight over due process. Refusing that instant verdict, he insisted nobody could know until he actually tried. Taiyu sighed at the persistence, his talent assessment apparently arriving faster than the lesson, yet finally returned the wooden sword and allowed the alleged lost cause one attempt. The teacher watched closely as Tenma's hand closed around the hilt, activating his max-level swordsmanship and settling his body into a disciplined stance. He calmly asked whether Taiyu still believed he lacked what swordsmanship required. The answer died unspoken. Without prior training, his entire posture had transformed immediately upon gripping the weapon. Now visibly unsettled, Taiyu ordered his unexpected student to follow him, leading the lesson from the dojo to a wooded hillside overlooking the city. There, he took position and promised to demonstrate the completed movement first. Although straight line slash remained an incomplete level 0 skill, he called this demonstration special fan service. A confident smile replaced his earlier doubt as the performance began, and the wooden blade rose overhead beneath the open sky. Taiyu brought it down in one severe vertical stroke, releasing force through the clearing, which shattered the row of timber posts ahead into severed pieces. He turned, raised the practice sword, and invited Tenma to reproduce what he had seen. His smile carried a fresh challenge. The supposedly talentless pupil had earned a considerably longer audition. Tenma copied the overhead posture and gathered every detail his max sword skill could organize, then struck the first post hard, producing impact but none of the master's clean destruction. Taiyu's private verdict swung back to hopeless. Owning swordsmanship apparently did not include this basic technique. More heavy attempts followed, each wooden blow battering the target instead of slicing straight through, until the teacher estimated even this pace needed 10 years. And this was hardly advanced swordplay. Asked for a better explanation, he admitted anyone except a supposed fan would already be packing. Still, Taiyu explained, raising the sword should connect with heaven, while bringing it down should join heaven and earth through one perfectly straight imagined line. Sweating but attentive, Tenma accepted the bizarrely cosmic instructions without complaint, and repeated the downward swing, hammering the post while refining the path each time. The endless impacts convinced Taiyu this remained hopeless, so he suggested ending practice. But another descending strike landed before the dismissal could settle, and its changed sound snapped the teacher's attention back toward the supposedly doomed lesson. A concentrated blow now carved downward with noticeably cleaner force, making him stop and question exactly what kind of improvement he was witnessing, because the wooden sword's trajectory sharpened further with every repetition. That growth should have been impossible, yet his own eyes kept filing objections against common sense, as the next strike split deeply through the thick timber, blasting the surrounding posts apart under the force of a suddenly precise straight line. Tenma lowered the wooden sword among scattered chunks, turning a 10-year estimate into a very short afternoon. Taiyu stumbled over his earlier no-talent verdict, then remembered a convenient escape hatch, abruptly raising the test instead of admitting his first assessment had aged terribly. One post meant nothing now. The student had to cut 4 lined-up logs with one stroke, though the teacher privately considered that impossible and generously allowed the doomed attempt anyway. That suspiciously sudden requirement earned a confused look, before Tenma stepped toward the 4 thick targets and settled his grip. He lifted the wooden sword into the heavens-linked stance, already making Taiyu reconsider, then drove one perfectly vertical arc down through the entire line, exploding every post apart as the system recognized straight line slash level 1. Talentless adjustment multiplied the technique's experience by 100,000, officially adding it to his skills. Taiyu dropped backward from pure disbelief, his challenge returning with several unexpected refunds, while the new student answered the speechless stare with one quietly satisfied smile. As sunset settled over the city, the story shifted to the Shirogane sisters' apartment, where blue spatial energy opened above the building, depositing Yuna indoors with grocery bags still hanging from both hands. She announced her return, but Yuki immediately scolded her for recklessly teleporting home, warning that wasted power could leave her unable to use it when truly needed. Yuna brushed off the lecture, then noticed her older sister's face was unusually red, prompting Yuki to deny it before asking why she was acting so differently from normal. Claiming nothing happened outside, she fidgeted with her glasses and tried ending the interrogation there, only to ask whether her big sister knew a hunter named Tenma Tsukishiro. Yuki had never heard the name, but her thoughtful smile suggested the question itself mattered, and after Yuna awkwardly accepted that answer, she wondered whether something strange had been eaten. Later, the younger sister curled around a pillow in bed, replaying the supermarket conversation, asking whether mentioning Yuki was merely his excuse to obtain her number. The oddball had not looked bad either, which hardly helped her overheated train of thought, before Yuki leaned in and asked whether she had met someone, detonating the remaining composure. Calling her incredibly easy to read, the older sister settled onto the bed, then asked who the mysterious man was because subtlety had already left the apartment. Yuna admitted he was the person who helped her recently, receiving an expectant request for more, but insisted it meant little because he had only asked for her number. Yuki accepted that defense and requested an introduction if anything developed, earning reluctant agreement. She also announced tomorrow's large-scale guild raid would keep her away several days, since gates were behaving strangely, then warned Yuna away from dangerous association work, receiving the familiar overprotective sister complaint. After Yuki left the room and closed the door, Yuna immediately reached for her phone beneath the pillow, opening Tenma's newly saved contact while her earlier denial quietly lost another round. Back at the hillside, repeated sword pressure had reduced the training line to scattered timber, and the system confirmed the active technique had reached level 10, its maximum. Exhausted but satisfied, he admitted learning the trick was difficult, while perfecting it became much easier. After thanking Taiyu and turning away, Tenma heard a strained request for one more favor, then found the proud swordsman kneeling behind him and pleading for attention. Taiyu grabbed both legs, demanding another demonstration with all dignity officially removed from inventory, because he could not understand reaching level 10 within minutes when even he had never managed it. Tenma wondered whether he had already surpassed the technique's own creator, while the system identified Kirishima-style single flash slash as a rare level 10 skill capable of cutting intangible objects. With one day remaining before the growth demon appeared, he decided to collect every useful sword skill possible and agreed to demonstrate the mastered slash again for his desperate teacher. Taiyu eagerly accepted, requesting lessons in other skills as payment for sharing his own repertoire, so Tenma formally introduced himself and offered a handshake to seal their exchange. The blue-haired swordsman's eyes immediately filled with tears before he launched forward, wrapped both arms around his new partner and shouted, "Master!" Declaring Tenma his teacher from that day onward, he squeezed harder, promised every Kirishima technique in return, and only released him after one deeply uncomfortable agreement. Their accelerated exchange began with Taiyo launching skyward above the battered field, drawing his blade for Kirishima style's 12th form, explosive Asura slash, then driving down through a fiery detonation that tore open the ground. Landing cheerfully, he asked whether his newly appointed master understood the movement, but Tenma's strained breathing showed this technique refused the usual easy download, since single flash slash was exceptional. Here, he could neither copy the motion nor understand its theory. Even talentless adjustment could not translate this form, confirming the painful truth that he genuinely lacked talent, while the system's natural effect activated over his exhausted body. Taiyu suggested ending practice, but mentioned one final matter before they separated. As Tenma said, he looked forward to seeing his teacher perfect single flash slash. The encouragement changed Taiyu's plans. Although he never intended to work after earning his hunter license, meeting this student convinced him to become a full-fledged hunter and genuinely try. The following day brought Tenma to a material shop, where an experienced craftsman praised the preserved wolf hide and fang as unusually high quality. He asked whether his customer knew dismantling, explaining that material work supported his livelihood, then added that superior components could grant crafted equipment stronger additional effects. Promising good payment, the craftsman invited him to bring every future quality material directly there. Tenma inspected a normal rank leather armor set with F- quality and 6 added defense, deciding that even beginner equipment could create a major difference when survival margins stayed thin. With one final task remaining, he pulled out his phone and called Yuna Shiragan, whose screen displayed his full name while ringing. A hand quickly answered from the apartment, revealing Yuna relaxing in casual clothes and a facial mask when his nervous greeting arrived. He said something needed telling and asked for a moment, immediately raising her expectations, so she claimed to be busy and considered making him wait just a little longer, until he explained the subject was an irregular gate, instantly replacing romance math with hunter business. Yuna went completely silent, leaving only the phone's tiny signal tones between them, and the pause stretched long enough to bury her carefully staged indifference before she finally shouted, demanding he repeat what he had just said. The system quest remained brutally simple: defeat one demon to earn every limit break reward, and standing before the morning light, Tenma decided he was ready, gripping Soul Predator as he declared the demon extermination underway. He met Yuna near the gateway, apologized for nothing because he had barely waited, then assured her his information was reliable and promised proof once they entered. Their destination was an irregular D-rank gate assigned to the Roman Guild, whom they would accompany, although Yuna paused to mention one additional matter, drawing a questioning glance that made her hesitate before she abandoned the subject, hurried ahead, and told him to start moving. He called after her while both rushed toward the gathered raid party, arriving precisely for entry beside D-rank Roman hunters Mayu Misaki and Taiga Saejima. Yuna introduced herself as the association representative and politely greeted Mai, while presenting Tenma as support prepared for anything unexpected inside the gate. Guildmaster Taiga offered only his name, ordered them behind, and said to leave when finished, because every monster inside belonged to his team and outsiders should avoid their hunt. Tenma agreed without argument, noticing the man had barely acknowledged either visitor while remembering the darker truth. In the original timeline, this demon killed everyone assembled there. Taiga noticed the lingering stare and sharply asked whether Tenma had something to say, but he suppressed the warning, answered no, and kept his future knowledge hidden. The guildmaster ordered both outsiders quiet and behind his hunters, prompting Yuna to whisper that this hostility was exactly why she disliked guilds treating the association as an enemy. The Roman party approached the swirling purple gate with their two reluctant guests following, until Yuna stopped everyone and announced she would first measure its energy. Violet power gathered around her, raised palm, spreading across the portal in layered waves while Tenma waited beside her. Her examination finished without any immediate alarm because the gate showed no unusual signs, though she asked whether his certainty remained. He calmly promised she would discover the truth soon enough, and Yuna called him interesting, agreeing to continue even if his claim fooled her. Inside, the group entered a moonlit blue forest surrounding a luminous river, whose beauty briefly stunned her despite the danger beneath it. Tenma gripped Soul Predator and compared the landscape with information preserved from his original timeline, concluding the growth demon was indeed somewhere within this gate. The raid party followed the glowing path deeper through the quiet forest, while Taiga barked at the association hunters not to wander too far, claiming any trouble involving them would become his headache. Yuna smiled through it, privately diagnosing terminal hunter syndrome, a D ranker confidently ordering around a C ranker. Ahead, the Roman hunters laughed together, comfortably certain their guildmaster belonged above ordinary competition, while Tenma recognized that rapid growth from F to D had given Taiga his happiest illusion. Hunters climbing the lower ranks often believed the same road naturally continued toward the top, but actual S-rankers were anomalies, not the guaranteed final step of an ordinary progression ladder. That reflection ended when someone warned of magic beasts approaching and 3 silver wolves charged from the glowing forest with claws forward. Taiga identified the pack and ordered everyone into formation, sending the front line ahead while the supporting hunters prepared behind them. Mai raised her crystal staff and cast shields, surrounding the party with a broad golden barrier before the wolves reached them. Another caster formed rotating magic circles and readied an arrow of blue energy, as a melee hunter met the first lunging wolf at close range. The spellcaster released fire through the layered circles, striking all 3 beasts with repeated explosions across their faces and bodies. Even staggered, the silver wolves kept pressing toward the formation, until a white-haired fighter rushed between them with weapon drawn, and the coordinated Roman team cut into every attacker while the barrier protected their advance. Watching from behind, Tenma judged their performance solid enough for an ordinary gate, with only one complication separating this raid from routine work: the growth demon lurking nearby, its influence already surrounding the snarling silver wolves. One enlarged beast crashed through a Roman hunter's defense with jaws wide, forcing Taiga to recognize these wolves were nothing like the expected D-rank prey. He ordered everyone back inside Mai's shield as all 3 monsters renewed their charge, yet even direct hits to vital points had barely slowed them. Another wolf burst through the fire and drove the front line into retreat, while a caster launched a fresh blue attack toward its exposed side. The spell struck in a brilliant impact but failed to stop the beast, leaving its shocked caster to admit her magic simply was not working. Claws slammed into the golden barrier and fractured its surface, before a roaring wolf broke through and lunged directly toward the defenders. The collision launched one hunter backward across the clearing, while another barely held off snapping jaws as the formation collapsed. Mai was knocked down beside the shattered defense, suddenly exposed, and Taiga shouted for everyone to keep fighting instead of falling apart. Tenma understood the cause. Demonic aura filled the gate, evolving every monster that absorbed it, making ordinary beasts far stronger and explaining why demons inspired such terror. A silver wolf unleashed another burning attack through the scattered Roman line, so Yuna asked whether they should intervene against monsters clearly beyond D-rank strength. He refused to promise help, saying they might not afford it, then activated level 10 Perception, expanding his awareness around them to assess whatever greater danger demanded priority. Perception traced the wolves through the forest and exposed their approach before another strike landed, as all 3 enhanced beasts turned and thundered toward the weakest section of the battlefield. One snapped at a fallen Roman hunter, bringing the crisis within a heartbeat of becoming fatal, so Tenma drew Soul Predator and channeled blue energy along its edge. His first cut dropped a wolf cleanly, while the level lock converted its experience into points, and Soul Predator's rare quality made every attack sharper than expected. The 2 remaining wolves charged together, forcing him to defend both sides, but he stepped forward and committed to finishing the pack. Kirishima-style single flash slash released a storm of orange trajectories around the nearest beast, carving through its reinforced body in rapid overlapping lines. As the last wolf moved, glowing band suddenly coiled around it and stopped the charge, while Yuna maintained the binding and shouted for Tenma to finish everything quickly. He recognized another ability beyond spatial teleportation, confirming the SSS ranker's younger sister was seriously capable, then answered with a sweeping blue sword arc across the trapped target. The crescent strike detonated through the wolf and erased its remaining momentum, leaving all three enhanced monsters defeated around the stunned raid party. Yuna could only stare and call the performance incredible as the final beast collapsed and dark vapor rose from its body. Soul Predator began consuming the fallen wolves' souls through a spiraling white current, and the sword's display reported its current soul concentration had reached 1%. Yuna pointed out another cluster still mauling the Roman party across the clearing, where enhanced wolves tore through desperate spells and scattered hunters beneath fresh bursts of fire. Taiga finally shouted for the outsiders to come help, but Tenma calmly reminded him that nobody was supposed to touch his precious guild prey. The guildmaster demanded how anyone could say that during a crisis before a wolf answered the argument by smashing him violently aside. Yuna asked again whether they should intervene, while the battle produced increasingly unhappy noises, and after the monsters fell, Taiga called a short break before ordering everyone toward the next area. A blonde Roman fighter challenged that decision, asking whether he seriously intended to continue like this, while Mai insisted their exhausted team had no safe way to advance farther. Taiga demanded what had gotten into them, dismissing the place as only a D-rank gate because failing the request meant no new equipment and no money for their debts. That logic exposed a familiar hunter trap. Game-like repetition could make truly otherworldly monsters feel routine. Yuna warned that advancing remained too dangerous since they were inside an irregular gate with strengthened monsters, but Taiga demanded proof and accused the association representative of trying to command every decision. He declared the Roman guild responsible here and ordered her not to overstep its authority, leaving Yuna glaring back rather than accepting his dismissal, until Mai began telling her to understand their position, then suddenly faltered and called Taiga's name, pointing beyond the group toward something that instantly replaced their argument. Two red eyes burned from the darkness beyond the fallen wolves, followed by one enormous claw striking the ground with demonic force. A towering silver wolf emerged wrapped in black and red aura, dwarfing every beast they had fought, and its roar rolled across the clearing before anyone could recover. The pressure hurled Roman hunters off their feet and scattered bodies across the path, leaving one stunned survivor asking what could produce such overwhelming power. Tenma drew his sword and identified the enormous wolf without hesitation because the creature was the gate's boss, now grotesquely empowered by the hidden demon. The system announced the silver wolf boss's roar as its red aura surged outward, inflicting fear that reduced judgment and mobility while driving splitting headaches through the raid party. Fighting the effect, Tenma urged Yuna to prepare spatial teleportation for an emergency escape, but she ordered him to gather everyone quickly, admitting she could not endure much longer. Exposure granted him mentality, which climbed from level 1 through level 3 under talentless adjustment, raising his resistance to mental status ailments by 9, and slightly strengthening his composure until he could force his body forward again. The Roman hunters staggered upright and begged one another to run before the fear locked them down, while Taiga clenched his jaw and struggled against the boss's aura, then heard a weakened Mai call his name and ask for help. He reached down through the crushing pressure and caught her hand, hauling the mage over his shoulder before running with the remaining guild members. Tenma realized letting them scatter would destroy Yuna's escape plan, so everyone had to stop, and he activated Intimidation, now raised to level 7. The pressure seized every nearby target, freezing the fleeing Roman hunters in an intimidated state, and Taiga crashed down mid-stride before he could carry Mai farther. Yuna ordered everyone together, revealing spatial teleportation would extract the entire group, while the Silver Wolf boss charged directly toward their forming circle. Tenma shouted her name and raced back as she maintained the spell, with the enormous beast descending upon the clustered hunters before their escape completed. Its claw slammed into the glowing formation at the final instant, yet spatial energy carried the raid party away and scattered them across another clearing. Mai panted beside an injured guildmate and believed they had survived, but another hunter realized the spell had not returned them to the gate entrance. Yuna confirmed the exit itself was closed, and Tenma explained an irregular gate would keep it sealed until the boss died. Taiga protested that defeating such a monster was impossible, only for a blue-charged sword to sweep directly above his head. He flattened himself against the ground, briefly assuming the new support hunter had snapped, before the slash passed over him and tore into the Silver Wolf boss charging from behind. Tenma told the stunned guildmaster not to worry because he would take the monster down, then stepped forward alone as Taiga stared from the ground. A Roman hunter pointed past him, confused by the boss's violently changing body, as its wounded form twisted beneath thick black and red demonic matter. The supposedly defeated wolf forced itself upright, aura pouring from every torn section, and one dark eye opened with an intelligence that no ordinary beast possessed. Tenma suspected the growth demon had taken control of the Silver Wolf boss's body, confirming this transformed creature was the actual quest target he needed to defeat. The possessed wolf completed its recovery, standing again beneath a writhing demonic shell, while Yuna rejected the idea that he intended to fight it directly. He announced only the two of them would take the monster down, prompting the Roman survivors to call that plan outright suicide. Before leaving, Tenma turned back and called Taiga, requesting his rare B+ metal armor, which added 25 defense and reduced beast damage 5%. Multiple howls echoed through the forest as Yuna asked what the transformed creature was and whether he had any plan, but his answer remained wonderfully uncomplicated. Beat it into submission through brute force. She called that less a strategy than an efficient route to getting them both killed, while he connected the boss's power up to the sealed gate and insisted their objectives stayed unchanged. 3 demonized silver wolves burst from the darkness and rushed them together, so Tenma leaped forward, promising to smash every one of them, and drove a blue sword strike through the first charging beast. The other 2 slipped around his attack and raced straight toward Yuna behind him. She answered with a roaring lightning strike that erupted from her outstretched hand, engulfing both demonized wolves in branching golden current before their jaws reached her. The blast hammered them into the ground and left the surrounding clearing scorched, earning a genuinely impressed "not bad" from Tenma. Yuna winked and revealed the association was already considering her promotion to B rank, while he regretted losing their experience but welcomed eliminating every transformed wolf at once. Soul Predator consumed the fresh souls, filling its concentration from 99 to 100%, and the completed charge unlocked the sword's hidden special function. Soul Release coated the blade in countless souls, greatly increasing attack power and range for 5 seconds, which impressed Tenma despite the brutally short activation window. Yuna warned that a truly dangerous aura was beginning to spread ahead, where the growth demon raised the possessed wolf beneath the moon amid writhing black tendrils. Phantom-like silver wolves gathered around it, answering with strange synchronized howls, and Yuna noticed the boss's voice sounded different from its usual roar. Tenma realized the demon had not yet absorbed the silver wolf boss's full power, creating his opening, but when she asked what he knew, he called the creature something worse than a magical beast, a walking natural disaster. He identified a growth demon as a special monster that hijacked boss bodies and helped destroy humanity, before the system declared they had entered a demonic servant's domain and imposed a restriction. Within 50 meters of the demon, living creatures were now forbidden from growing. Tenma promised to explain briefly while Yuna processed the new rule. The restriction matched his memory exactly, confirming the demon's identity beyond doubt, because every demon carried an inseparable restriction tied to its control over demonic energy. Each also possessed a personal domain that influenced everyone stepping inside, and growth limitation prevented nearby creatures from increasing power or awakening new abilities by any method. Its interference currently covered only 50 meters, but Tenma feared what continued expansion could mean, and Yuna understood the situation had become far worse than a sealed gate. The demon apparently found their hiding place and stared down from its moonlit perch, before the possessed wolf launched toward them with black tendrils trailing behind. Its landing demolished the earth where both hunters had stood, forcing them to split apart and sprint beyond the shockwave. From the crater rose a white-haired female form wrapped in dark purple energy, which Yuna recognized as another body the demon must have absorbed sometime in the past. The creature stamped down and condensed a dense violet sphere above one hand, then multiplied it into a ring of enormous magical projectiles suspended overhead. Both hunters froze for one breath at the unexpected arsenal, while Tenma realized growth demons should not possess this skill and likely stole it from an elf. As the violet spheres surrounded them, he told Yuna to focus entirely on dodging, and reactivated level 10 perception to read every incoming trajectory. The demon spread its arms and fired the full barrage simultaneously, sending the dark projectiles crashing inward through intersecting streams of purple force. Tenma shouted the timing, and both hunters moved as the barrage converged, each sphere erupting into violent black-purple energy around their narrowing escape lanes. More projectiles plunged from every direction, leaving almost no untouched ground, so level 10 agility accelerated his body between the first impacts. Level 10 footwork redirected each step through the collapsing gaps, and level 10 martial arts twisted him around another sphere at impossible proximity. He finally cleared the bombardment as its explosions shredded the clearing behind him, realizing 4 simultaneous max skills had been required merely to dodge. Even then, Taiga's armor had prevented a glancing hit from killing him, proving demonic strength exceeded expectations, so he resolved to attack before the next barrage could begin. The demon casually formed another violet sphere above one palm, while Tenma accelerated toward it through a rising blue wake. She enlarged the projectile and prepared to crush his direct approach, but he shouted for Yuna before the attack would release. Purple chains erupted from the ground and snapped around the demon's limbs, pulling her arms and body wide until the charged sphere destabilized. Yuna held the restraint from below and yelled that his opening had arrived, allowing him to close the remaining distance with Soul Predator raised. Kirishima-style energy gathered along one perfectly aligned descent, and straight-line slash dropped toward the immobilized demon in a brilliant blue column. The vertical split through the binding point and blasted the clearing apart, letting Tenma land beyond the impact with a brief, satisfied breath. He turned through the settling debris, expecting the chained target to remain wounded, But the growth demon surged back into the silver wolf boss's massive body. Seeing it survive did not erase his confidence, only confirm how it escaped, because instantly enlarging the wolf form had spread the slash across much more body mass. That transformation also snapped Yuna's binding chains, freeing every enormous limb at once. She shouted a warning as the wolf opened its jaws around another violet sphere, combining stolen elf magic with the boss's monstrous body to charge a stronger barrage. Dark projectiles erupted downward like pillars, targeting both hunters and the recovering Roman party, and Tenma called the simultaneous physique and magic combination completely absurd. One massive sphere descended directly over a stranded guild member, only for a horizontal golden blast to intercept it before impact. Tenma shielded his head from the collision and searched for its source, finding Yuna beneath a radiant magic circle, protecting the survivors while holding her ground. He used her cover to sprint back toward the possessed boss, threading through the remaining violet impacts as they tore apart his path. Another straight-line slash crashed into the wolf's body at close range, meeting its demonic charge with one violent blue-red collision, and finally launching the enormous boss backward above the shattered ground. Tenma landed hard against broken earth, breathing through the accumulated strain, while another enormous violet sphere formed above the recovering wolf and locked onto him. He dove forward as it detonated where his back had been, then sprinted through a relentless rain of smaller projectiles chasing his every step. An attrition battle favored the demon completely, so he searched for a decisive alternative, only to spot Yuna still shielding the survivors beneath repeated impacts. She admitted her mana was almost exhausted while the glowing barrier continued cracking, and another near hit knocked Tenma sideways across the damaged field. Beside him lay separated black pieces of the growth demon's body, which could not merge back after straight-line slash cut them, proving his attacks genuinely worked. Now he only needed one finishing blow strong enough to remove the entire target, so he rushed through the smoke with blue power returning along Soul Predator. A sweeping slash opened another long wound across the wolf form, tearing away more demonic mass as the boss roared and staggered. Landing beyond it, Tenma remembered he already possessed one attack powerful enough, the sword's soul release, available whenever sufficient monster souls had been collected. Unfortunately, its enhanced power lasted only 5 seconds while the wolf charged another sphere, so he shouted for Yuna and sprinted toward her position. She demanded why he was bringing the danger directly toward her, only for him to catch her around the waist before explaining whatever risky setup came next. Carrying Yuna through the falling projectiles, Tenma asked whether she could teleport them above the demon's head, and although only one mana-consuming use remained, he declared that single jump sufficient. He pushed her clear of the next descending projectile, drawing a startled scream, while she clasped both hands and accused him of losing his mind. The violet sphere crashed down over his exposed position, exploding into a deep black-purple crater that appeared to swallow him completely. High above the battlefield, however, a spatial portal cracked open, and Tenma dropped through it directly over the demon with his blade prepared. Yuna tumbled away beneath the collapsing energy after completing her final teleport, as Soul Predator activated Soul Release around its descending wielder. For the limited window, the sword's attack range and power expanded dramatically, surrounding Tenma with countless blue souls as he aligned one final overhead strike. The resulting colossal straight-line slash descended through the possessed wolf in a towering blue beam, consuming the demon's entire position rather than leaving another piece capable of escaping. The system confirmed the growth demon had been defeated, while its remaining black mass collapsed into the devastated crater below. Yuna lay exhausted among the broken ground, breathing hard after emptying her mana, and wondered who this supposed F-rank hunter truly was. His hidden abilities made no sense after an entire career spent officially at the bottom, but the cleared awakening quest now promoted him to D-rank at last. Tenma quietly celebrated reaching a rank his entire previous life had never allowed, until Yuna ordered him awake, and he admitted his body needed time before moving. She refused, warning they remained in trouble if they stayed where the demon dead fell, because dozens of red-eyed silver wolves had already surrounded the exhausted pair. The pack closed in from every side, growling through lingering demonic mist, so he asked Yuna to hold them for 5 minutes and received one deeply tired G's. She drank an intermediate magic recovery potion and restored enough mana to fight again, demanding the most expensive menu item afterward as payment for this increasingly premium rescue service. Lying flat, Tenma said even 1 minute would be enough, and her renewed magic erupted across the entire pack in a massive golden firestorm. He tried stopping her before the promised restaurant bill gained another 0, but the system announced every silver wolf defeated and the irregular gate cleared. A surviving Roman hunter threw both arms up and celebrated their escape, while Yuna reminded Tenma about dinner after personally driving off all 50 wolves. Once his strength returned, he supported her shoulder until she insisted she could walk alone, then returned the battered pieces of Taiga's borrowed armor. The guildmaster mourned his ruined set while Mai thanked both rescuers for bringing everyone back alive, explaining the association would award contribution points and therefore needed the mysterious support hunter's name. She politely asked him to identify himself, and Tenma answered with the false name Busan Gariki, choosing anonymity over applause. Mai thanked Mr. Gariki and promised never to forget what he had done, while Yuna leaned close and whispered whether he was wanted, since only fugitives hid identities this badly. Major guild backing could accelerate his growth far beyond what his previous life achieved, but growing too quickly risked landing him on the demon's blacklist, while their agent still lurked inside society. Until he could protect himself from that attention, standing out publicly meant game over. Understanding enough, Yuna offered to hide his real identity in her official report, reasoning that his warning had prevented a major disaster, though she still checked whether he truly wanted secrecy. Ten said her help would genuinely matter, leaving her briefly flustered before she recovered the conversation, promised to call later, and reminded him that the expensive meal remained legally binding in spirit. He watched her leave, then remembered one final practical problem, calling after Miss Shear again before she could get farther away. She turned with a hopeful, embarrassed question, only to hear him request spatial teleportation all the way to Ryuzan while he was battered. The romantic possibilities died behind one perfectly flat stare, and she teleported him away with enough irritated energy to make the message unmistakable. The next day began at his apartment under a clear city sky, where level 10 natural recovery activated its superhuman healing effect as he woke. Fully functional after the demon fight, he called the ability an outright cheat, especially when one night's sleep granted massive experience and raised natural recovery's progress to 35%. Defeating the demon also raised every skill's cap beyond level 10 through Talentless Adjustment's limit break, but his vibrating phone interrupted the celebration from beside the bed. Hiroki Gondo had called 4 times, reminding him of the temporary raid agency he once relied upon, yet a newly promoted D-ranker no longer needed dangerous fill-in work to survive. He opened his inventory instead and searched the raid rewards, finding a high-purity C+ mana crystal glowing red and gold in his hand. Although recovered from a D-rank dungeon, its exceptional purity should fetch roughly 500,000 yen, while the limit break confirmed raised skill caps, 1.2 times stat growth, and an unlocked shop of causality reversal. The interface looked nothing like an ordinary system shop, offering only consumables, locking every other category, and keeping 500 points under a strict no-returns policy. Weapons and accessories might unlock later, but the potion shelf was his only current option, presenting treasure acquisition and talent acquisition potions at 500 points each. Since the system had never deliberately harmed him, he trusted the strange purchase despite limited information, spending all 500 points on the treasure acquisition potion. Its description promised to reverse causality and guide him toward treasure for exactly 1 hour, a valuable prospect when money remained the essential weapon behind every successful gate raid. Tenma drank the blue liquid directly from its cloth-wrapped bottle, then stared at the container when absolutely nothing seemed different. A moment later, blue fire bearing a yen symbol floated into view, hovering beside the bed like a supernatural financial advisor with much better special effects. The guiding flame settled onto his phone, suggesting the treasure trail began with an incoming call, then dissolved into the device before he could touch it. Hiroki called again, angrily asking whether his former fill-in finally planned to answer, and Tenma picked up without the old anxiety that once accompanied this number. The team leader screamed about ignored calls, a lost deal, and threatened death unless he reported immediately, which explained exactly why causality had pointed toward the temporary agency. As Hiroki demanded what he had just muttered, Tenma stood, ordered him to remain there, and ended the call on his own terms. The blue flame guided him into a narrow building beneath the Daiichi printing sign, then climbed the dim interior stairs toward the agency office. It stopped before one door as the treasure acquisition potion remained active, confirming whatever counted as treasure waited on the other side. Hiroki greeted him with a swinging blow and called him a worthless stopgap, blaming 4 missed calls for losing a major deal and promising severe punishment. He ordered 2 large hunters to administer a little re-education, apparently the agency's least accredited course. While Tenma remembered Hiroki was merely an ordinary civilian whose authority depended entirely on hired muscle. Memory search replayed the repeated beatings those 2 hunters had inflicted throughout his previous life, identifying them as D-rank Masato Kido and D-rank Taiji Kumagawa. Taiji grabbed his cheek and mocked the unusual glare, asking whether he had eaten something strange, but even Masato noticed the former victim acting differently before Hiroki ordered them to discipline him anyway. Tenma asked whether Taiji still failed to understand how completely their situation had reversed, because unlike before, he now faced barely D-rank opponents whose hunter skills reached level 5 at best. Level 10 strength activated as he caught Taiji's wrist and broke the larger man's leverage, then flung the enforcer across the office before anyone adjusted to the speed. Taiji crashed through shelves and scattered books around the suddenly silent room, while Masato roared and launched a direct punch at the smaller hunter. Level 10 Perception read the attack before it entered range, and Level 10 Martial Arts converted the missed swing into one effortless throw. Masato landed flat on his back, ending the agency's re-education seminar ahead of schedule. Hiroki screamed that his enforcers were doing everything wrong and demanded proper violence, so Taiji tore through his clothing as every muscle swelled unnaturally, activating Level 5 whole body strength amplification and rising like an angry wall. The transformed hunter launched himself forward with one crushing fist, only for Tenma's counterpunch to slam directly into his jaw. That compact strike sent the enormous body flipping backward toward Hiroki, and both employer and employee crashed through the office together. Buried beneath the wreckage, Hiroki threatened to end Tenma's hunter career and called him trash, but the newly promoted D-ranker stepped closer and calmly asked him to repeat that. The civilian insisted nobody escaped consequences in such a small industry, while the blue yen flame appeared over his face, and Tenma smiled, asking exactly what Hiroki planned to do next. Minutes later, Hiroki and both enforcers knelt together, apologizing and promising to surrender everything they owned, while Tenma demanded repayment for every taxi fare deducted from his raid wages. With the old score settled, he wondered whether actual money was hidden somewhere inside, and the blue flame redirected him toward an entire bookshelf. He searched behind rows of dusty volumes until something metallic appeared, revealing a concealed safe and 20-digit keypad marked by the treasure guide. Tenma asked whether this was the target, alarming Hiroki enough to question his intentions, but one quiet turn made the kneeling civilian apologize again before finishing the complaint. Regaining courage, Hiroki bragged that no skill could open the safe's multi-layered 20-digit password, exactly as the potion's blue flame settled onto the keypad. Every stored password cleared automatically, turning elite security into one extremely expensive decorative panel, and Tenma opened the safe to discover what hidden treasure had attracted causality. The lock released beneath his fingertip, exposing sealed documents, cash-like bundles, and a small object glowing beneath the blue flame. Hiroki demanded how he opened it, while Tenma identified a ledger recording various illegal gains. He also found a mana crystal key capable of opening treasure boxes ranked C or lower, worth over 1 million yen. That certainly qualified as treasure, though taking it made causality reversal feel suspiciously close to robbery until the guiding flame shifted from the key toward a particular hidden report. The Yokohama dungeon file promised abundant mana crystals behind a mental barrier requiring C++ resistance, and Tenma recognized the dungeon immediately, realizing it offered far more than a single stolen key. Hiroki begs him to reconsider, insisting even a D-rank hunter cannot enter the costly target location, but Tenma calmly says he will judge that himself, leaving the kneeling broker with no leverage. The office door opens, and a tall white-haired man in a long white coat steps inside, remarking that someone reached the office before him, clearly pursuing the same hidden information. Tenma recognizes the man from his ruined future, while the visitor studies him with equal curiosity. Then the white-haired stranger directly asks whether Tenma knows who he is. He remembers Kyosuke Sengoku, a name known by virtually everyone in the devastated future world, and Sengoku already knows him too, identifying the supposedly talentless F-rank hunter by his real name. He even cites Tenma's local nickname, Stopgap, proving his information network does not miss small fish, while the blue yen flame remains inside the open safe, marking the removed report as their shared target. Tenma holds up the report and asks whether it is exactly what the newcomer came seeking, and Sengoku brightens, asking how he knew his polished composure briefly gives way to genuine surprise. Hiroki lunges for the document, shouting that anything would be acceptable except surrendering that particular report, but Sengoku answers with one clean kick, turning the broker's protest into airborne punctuation. Hiroki crashes face first onto the floor, while Sengoku keeps the report and his composure equally spotless, then asks why the broker lied about possessing it after making him search for so long. Sengoku thanks Tenma for cooperating and promises to express his gratitude properly on another occasion, handing him a business card and instructing him to call its number in 1 week. Tenma stares at the card, stunned that Kyosuke Sengoku personally offered him a direct line, because this S-rank information group boss became both hero and monster after predicting the demon invasion. Sengoku's overwhelming intelligence network earned that reputation, and his apparent departure does little to relax Tenma, because the S-ranker pauses to call him a truly fascinating person before leaving. Sengoku admits even he was deceived, revealing that the association's cover story never fooled him completely, and again describes the supposed F-ranker as fascinating, making the compliment sound more like surveillance. Realizing the information boss saw through him, Tenma understands his carefully buried secret has acquired an audience. While Sengoku identifies him as the hunter who resolved the Nightcrow incident but denies intending blackmail, he only wants to know why Tenma acted, promising to hear the entire explanation at their next meeting, then leaves through the damaged office, casually ending an interrogation that arrived disguised as a thank you. Tenma considers receiving Sengoku's business card an extraordinary stroke of luck, and the system takes him literally, awarding him luck level 1 before he can finish appreciating the connection. Luck increases the probability of good fortune and improves ordinary everyday luck, a passive advantage with excellent timing, while Sengoku's network could provide both money and demon intelligence, making this fortunate contact strategically priceless. The treasure acquisition potion finally expires, its blue fire dissolving after delivering far more than buried valuables. His consumable shop now shows 0 points, another treasure potion for 500, and an experience acquisition potion for 1000, though he calls the second option a talent acquisition potion and notes that buying it still requires points. He decides leveling comes next, using Gondo's money to secure the equipment needed for another dungeon run. Later, he walks through Ruzan's shopping street towards stores serving professional hunters, presents a written equipment list to a female clerk who immediately begins gathering every requested item. A 1.4 million yen backpack, shovel, and pickaxe devour his new funds, but each is essential for the dungeon, leaving only 7,842 yen in his hunter bank account. The financial aftermath of preparing properly for treasure. Tenma calls the expense an upfront investment, dries his tears, and heads out to earn more money, reaching Yokohama by sunset and climbing the rocky approach with his heavily stocked hunter backpack. He finds the rough stone entrance from the report and steps inside without encountering guards or monsters, descending a long illuminated staircase until the promised mental barrier replaces any conventional dungeon welcome committee. The barrier blocks the interior and would destroy an ordinary hunter's mind or leave them vegetative. Then violet darkness closes around him, filling the stairway with hostile eyes and a whisper calling him an idiot. Mental strength level 3 activates against the magic, and Tenma reminds himself the voices only manipulate emotion, but the barrier weaponizes every old insult, calling him trash, dead weight, and an F-ranker who should retreat. The abuse presses directly into his mind, repeating the contempt that defined his first life as a hunter, and pre-regression despair washes over him like a wave, making the past feel brutally present again. Hallucinated hunters call Tenma worse than a goblin, reopening humiliation he endured more times than he can count. Yet he rejects that powerless identity, focuses on moving forward, and keeps walking through the mental assault. Sustained resistance raises mental strength first to level 4 and then level 5 as he reaches the barrier's end, finally breaking through and catching himself on the stone floor, exhausted but still conscious. He knows that without mental strength, determination alone would have ended somewhere between collapse and permanent ruin, then enters a vast underground chamber whose empty platforms and passages contain no visible monsters. A swirling violet wall waits deeper inside, suggesting the entrance barrier was merely the dungeon's opening argument, while the complete absence of monsters this far into a D+ dungeon makes the layout suspiciously familiar. Tenma activates level 10 memory search, connecting the monsterless D-rank gate and its mental defenses to an old memory, and realizes the report's claim that top C-rank hunters could approach was only true near the entrance. In the original timeline, a deeper barrier defeated even S-rank hunters, allowing an undefeated Demon Corps commander to occupy the gate, a title reserved for demons whose overwhelming strength rivaled SSS-rank hunters and drove humanity toward despair. Memory search reveals that beyond this barrier lies equipment the future Corps commander will eventually wield, so Tenma concludes those artifacts are the true fortune awaiting him and steps into the violet wall. Monthly Hunter's account warned that mental attacks and mechanical traps both guard everything beyond this point, and an almost imperceptible sound immediately confirms the article was not padding its page count. The stronger mental pressure crushes down again, forcing Tenma to endure another flood of hostile sensations, while level 10 perception and agility activate together as hidden projectiles launch through the barrier. He realizes losing either perception or mental resistance would have left him unable to react, paralyzed beneath the magic while the first volley completed the dungeon's extremely literal rejection process. Since seeing each attack is already too late, Tenma uses perception to dodge the instant he hears it, and a cluster of arrows slams into the exact patch of floor he just abandoned. He sprints through successive volleys, threading between missiles before their trajectories can close around him, twisting past broad blades and spearheads while the mental barrier keeps trying to slow every movement. Continuous resistance raises mental strength to level 6 as another dense arrow storm tears through the corridor. Then level 7 arrives while he flips beneath a second crossfire, without surrendering forward momentum. Mental strength reaches level 8 as heavier spearheads join the barrage from multiple angles, rises to level 9 while stone blocks and black projectiles turn the corridor into weaponized architecture, and reaches level 10 as Tenma outruns a massive rolling boulder through collapsing dust. The skill finally breaks its former cap at level 11, while he narrowly evades another enormous stone sphere. Mental strength reaches its new maximum and grants an additional effect, leaving Tenma calm even under mental attacks. Anti-Psycho magic makes him immune to negative effects caused specifically by mental magic, not every unpleasant thought. Violet fog spreads across the floor beyond the traps as he continues toward the buried equipment, and Tenma recognizes it as the signal for the dungeon's strongest psychological assault. Monthly Hunter reported that even S-rank hunters found the mental attack beginning inside this fog unbearable, where one illusion begs for release and death, replaying terror recorded within the gate. Other apparitions reenact murder, blame, and desperate rage, surrounding Tenma with the dead visitor's final moments. Yet he walks through their apologies and violence without letting the visions disturb his judgment. These illusions come from memories of previous entrants, but level 11 mental strength nullifies their negative effects, allowing Tenma to cross the violet chamber with the composure that once eluded every challenger. A horned armored guardian materializes ahead, levitating with a gigantic sword wrapped in demonic energy, and Tenma draws Soul Predator, knowing defeating this boss should grant access to the artifact. Blue energy surges around his blade as he prepares to test the dungeon's final defender, while appraisal shows demonic aura-infused Soul Predator now has 33 attack and demonic aura predation at 1 of 5. Trusting level 10 swordsmanship, Tenma charges without hesitation and challenges the armored boss blade to blade, but their collision detonates blue and violet power across the chamber, instead of yielding an easy opening. The Guardian's enormous sword drives him backward through the cracking floor despite his concentrated counterattack, and his strikes cause no damage, while level 10 endurance keeps him moving after a potentially fatal impact. The boss combines extraordinary durability with magic-infused sword aura, making brute exchanges overwhelmingly unfavorable, then raises its demonic blade again, pressing the attack before Tenma can recover his footing. The Guardian compounds the problem by summoning several smaller armored swordsmen from the surrounding demonic haze, leaving the level 20 hunter facing a boss he cannot damage, plus an expanding support roster. Tenma pauses and remembers that monsters summoned by a boss should still award experience when defeated, meaning the minions can fuel new levels now that his promotion to D rank removed the previous cap. At level 20 with 0 progress, Talentless Adjustment's limit break still multiplies earned experience by 100,000, so he faces the advancing summons with a plan that converts the boss's reinforcements into immediate growth. Level 7 Intimidation freezes the armored minions beneath a colossal red eye, opening the formation at once, and Tenma launches Kirishima-style straight line slash through the immobilized front line. A broad blue arc tears across the summoned swordsmen, cutting through armor before they can defend, while the first kills trigger limit breaks 1.2 times stat growth and visibly strengthen his entire body. The 100,000-fold experience reward erupts, racing him from level 20 through multiple consecutive increases until Tenma reaches level 30 and returns his newly amplified blade toward the main guardian. The boss answers with a concentrated violet thrust, refusing to let its profitable reinforcements decide the battle, and drives its enormous demonic sword downward with enough force to split the chamber floor. Tenma leaps clear, then redirects his blue-charged sword into a descending counterattack of his own, as perception and martial arts help his rapidly changing physical abilities remain coordinated during the aerial rotation. His empowered blue slash finally crashes directly into the armored guardian and forces it backward, while he lands inside a blue shockwave, now fast and strong enough to control the exchange. More defeated summons push his level through 37, 38, and 39 in another brilliant surge. Then level 40 arrives, and the Guardian's conveniently self-delivering experience supply finally stops spawning. Only the boss remains, and it gathers a towering violet sword aura for one decisive attack, sending the massive blade downward as Tenma launches himself up the broken chamber wall to intercept. He activates level 10 straight line slash, concentrating his new level 40 strength into one perfectly aligned counter, and the blue strike meets the violet weapon head-on, splitting their collision across the chamber. The sustained slash finally cracks through the Guardian's horned helmet and reaches the energy hidden inside, severing a brilliant red core that had been sustaining the armored body and its demonic power. Blue force erupts through the Guardian, tearing its armor apart and ending the duel in one ascending blast, while Soul Devourer consumes the released demonic energy, gains 3 attack, and confirms the value of leveling. With level 40 capped, the remaining reward becomes 213 points, and the dungeon boss is officially defeated. The system explains that unlike gates, dungeons always provide a clear reward. Finally, bureaucracy with a treasure chest. A golden light appears above Tenma's hands, delivering the item intended for the future Demon Corps commander, and condenses into a small dark ring edged with gold, visually modest after everything guarding it. He lifts the plain ring from the fading light, uncertain how such a simple object justified S-rank defenses, then reminds himself not to judge an item by its cover, and opens its information panel. The unique Ring of Defense grants 10 defense, though its core functions remain completely sealed. Tenma identifies it as a growth-type item, an ideal match for his 100,000-fold experience trait, because the ring grows alongside its user by feeding directly on the experience they earn. His status now shows age 24, locked level 40, D rank, talentless adjustment, and 313 points, triggering another limit break quest and a special issued item as he asks what comes next. The D-rank quest demands 3 demonic springs, promising 1x3 times stat growth, higher skill caps, and new trait shop effects. Tenma wonders whether the system understands his true mission, preventing the demon invasion that destroyed their world, because requesting exactly 3 demonic springs feels too precise to dismiss as ordinary system coincidence. Full demon armies cannot invade yet because Earth's environment differs fundamentally from the demon realm, so Project Demonic Energy uses sacred relics called demonic springs, each containing highly concentrated demonic power. Placing those springs around Earth gradually prepares suitable conditions for the demon's planned invasion, a conspiracy exposed in the original timeline by a condemned human traitor who had colluded with them. Before his execution, the traitor mocked the crowd for believing the invasion began without years of preparation, insisting the demons had been arranging their arrival long before humanity recognized any threat. They gathered demonic springs to engineer their invasion of the human world, calling it Project Demonic Energy, and the terrified prisoner admitted too late that the project's ultimate purpose was humanity's extinction. Facing the silent crowd and waiting blade, his grim warning becomes one of Tenma's preserved future memories. Then the guillotine falls, ending the testimony without ending the threat it revealed. Tenma concludes destroying the springs can halt Project Demonic Energy and prevent the real-world invasion, then checks the remaining limit break rewards now that his next strategic objective is clear. Talentless Adjustment issues another special item for reaching the new level cap, just as it provided Soul Devourer at the previous cap, and blue light fills the chamber again. Tenma recognizes the shape emerging from the reward glow, but hesitates at the unexpected weapon class, because the new issued item is a large blue three-pronged spear rather than another sword. 1 week later, Tenma walks toward a crowded stadium through a peaceful flow of ordinary visitors, cherishing a sight absent from his ruined future and silently vowing never to lose it again. His phone interrupts the reflection, presenting the unread conversations he has been postponing for an entire week, including 99 food demands from Yuna and 1 apology from Hiroki, which he tactically ignores together. Tenma continues toward the stadium complex, leaving the messages unanswered while hunters train around its outer grounds, surprised that his current plans have finally brought him to this prestigious facility. The Hunter Training Center attracts every elite hunter eventually. Poverty barred him before, but today's budget allows entry until a sudden danger registers beside him and turns facility orientation into an emergency reflex test. A red sports car skids directly toward Tenma while nearby trainees scramble away from its path, and level 10 perception lets him roll clear as the car whips past with inches to spare. Tenma rises furious and asks whether the driver is actually trying to kill him, but the person stepping from the vehicle carries a familiar presence that arrests his anger. The backlit driver leans against the red car, and Tenma recognizes someone he recently trained, as Taiyu Kirishima cheerfully calls him master and celebrates meeting him here by pure chance. Taiyu says a guild signing bonus bought the sports car because, naturally, every star requires dramatic transportation, then reveals he joined the Guardian Guild after deciding to become an active hunter. Guardian, Silver Wing, and 5 Stars reign as the country's 3 leading guild organizations, and Guardian recognized Taiyu's exceptional Sword Saint talent before anyone else could recruit him. Tenma concludes the signing bonus was enormous, neatly explaining the expensive red evidence parked beside them. He asks Taiyu to stop calling him master, since the title now feels unnecessarily heavy, prompting the blue-haired swordsman to ask what respectful alternative he should use instead. Big Brother sounds equally wrong, so Tenma tells him to choose whatever address feels natural. Taiyu considers adding Mr., but that formality also feels wrong for their unusual teacher-student arrangement, so Tenma excuses himself and starts walking inside before the naming committee consumes the afternoon. Taiyu calls him back and follows, unwilling to let his newly rediscovered master escape so easily. Training rooms range from 50,000 to 1 million yen per session, stunning Tenma with premium-priced exercise, and he reluctantly chooses the cheapest A-rank option while questioning the facility's entire business model. Taiyu calmly places his guild card on the counter and overrides that financially responsible decision, earning an immediate escort to the VIP training room while Tenma studies the payment details in disbelief. 1 VIP session costs 3 million yen, proving Guardian's signing bonus included more than car money. Taiyu invites his master along, and Tenma accepts the reversal by calling him his generous disciple. Inside the vast simulation room, holographic dragons and monsters provide targets as both hunters begin training. Tenma hurls the new spear straight through a large stone target with enough force to shatter it, then speaks the word retrieval, testing the weapon's named return function. The embedded spear tears free of the broken target and rockets back across the room, landing securely in his hand without forcing him to cross the arena and recover it manually. The unique Spear of Retrieval has 45 attack, retrieval level 5, and piercing level 5, while Taiyu approaches with drawn swords and asks which techniques the unfamiliar weapon possesses. Tenma admits he merely threw hard, yet the action instantly grants maximum throwing level 11 with 25% bonuses, and the spear's momentary destructive power exceeds Soul Devourer, making it an excellent secondary weapon. A towering violet dragon simulation materializes overhead, giving both hunters a suitably unreasonable next target, and Taiyu launches first, determined not to fall behind the man he still insists on calling master. Taiyu carves through the simulated dragon with crossing sword arcs, unleashing a storm of spectral strikes, and Tenma admits the Sword Saint's technique is so refined that even he cannot imitate it. Taiyu lands hard with both swords crossed, yet his expression carries frustration rather than satisfaction, because the attack still feels wrong to him despite looking devastating from the outside. He asks his master to demonstrate straight line slash again, assuming the technique remains unfinished, but Tenma says he simply added Taiyu's heaven and earth theory and kept swinging until it worked. Taiyu repeats the motion relentlessly, trying to understand how such blunt advice produced that result, while Tenma answers by demonstrating the slash, pushing its level 10 progress to 99%. Talentless adjustment floods him with experience, breaking the ceiling and granting straight line slash level 11, as Taiyu strains against the pressure, receiving a front row lesson with absolutely no gentle setting. Tenma completes the swing, releasing an enormous blue crescent that surges cleanly across the training room, and Taiyu excitedly names it Tsukishiro-style straight line slash while its embarrassed creator protests the ceremony. To Taiyu, evolving an established skill is extraordinary, regardless of how casually his master dismisses it, but Tenma's ringing phone interrupts the celebration before the new technique gains an even longer title. The caller is Kyosuke Sengoku, finally contacting him 1 week after their agreement at Gondo's office. So Tenma thanks Taiyu for the room and leaves early, explaining that something urgent has arisen. He exits the VIP arena, leaving his disciple alone with fresh inspiration and several expensive projections, and Taiyu kneels dramatically, swearing he will eventually reach the Tsukishiro-style technique's elevated state. Tenma later meets Kyosuke at a cafe where the information broker waits calmly across the table, and Kyosuke says Tenma's cooperation completely transformed his guild's position, a genuine stroke of heavenly luck. Kyosuke now intends to express his gratitude personally, immediately earning Tenma's full attention, because the information broker follows a strict policy of always returning every favor he receives. More precisely, Kyosuke refuses to remain indebted to anyone, a promise sharpened into business doctrine, reminding Tenma of the calculating information broker he encountered amid the ruined world's devastation. That future Kyosuke supported humanity, not charity, demanding useful intelligence or abilities from anyone seeking survival, and hearing the same philosophy now confirms the man remains fundamentally unlike the other celebrated heroes. Since every move follows calculation, Tenma realizes his own unusual value may currently make him indispensable. He places a large bag on the table, first confirming Kyosuke truly intends to return the favor, then reveals mana crystals harvested from the D-rank dungeon Gondo had secretly controlled. Tenma offers the entire gleaming hall for trade, turning gratitude into something both men understand perfectly, and asks for a continuing arrangement rather than treating this valuable exchange as a single transaction. Such unknown crystals normally demand guild-level trust, but Kyosuke's loyalty to profit neatly clears that hurdle, and he accepts without hesitation, promising never to break his word while Tenma credits the treasure potion. Tenma adds another request, sliding a folded sheet across the cafe table toward his new partner, and Kyosuke opens a list containing names of people, locations, and even specific items. Tenma knows only fragments about these targets, but believes one conceals the source of demonic energy, so he asks Kyosuke's exceptional information network to locate them before the demons advance their project. Kyosuke would gladly search, yet warns that the assignment scale far exceeds his original expectations, then requests Tenma's assistance in return, receiving an immediate agreement from the hunter across the table. Kyosuke calls him a D-rank mercenary by name, startling Tenma with knowledge he never disclosed. Kyosuke needs his skill for a special dungeon restricted to D-rank hunters or lower, and Tenma realizes this mission, not gratitude alone, is the real reason the information broker summoned him. The objective is retrieving the Jewel of Aldoria, an item Kyosuke declares absolutely necessary. Its name sounds strangely familiar to Tenma, giving the polished request a potentially deeper significance, and he learns other unusually talented D-rank hunters will participate rather than leaving him alone. Kyosuke offers introductions first, assembling the carefully selected team before they enter the restricted dungeon. The assignment carries Tenma into a remote mountain region, far beyond the cafe's comfortable negotiations, where two waiting hunters greet him politely, though their promised outstanding talent is not immediately obvious. The newcomers are a towering tank and a slimmer black-haired mage, both equipped for the expedition, beginning with 27-year-old Masayoshi Yakumo, who asks damage dealers to trust his defensive role. Masayoshi finishes presenting himself as the party's tank, confident he can protect everyone while they attack. But Tenma remembers Iron Wall Yakumo as a violent harasser, notorious scumbag, and merciless rookie killer. The quieter hunter introduces himself as Jin Yozaki, awkwardly admitting that he specializes in lightning magic, yet Tenma knows this electric psychopath becomes a murderous villain. Kyosuke truly recruits without sentiment. A pink-haired woman then introduces herself, explaining that her primary weapon is a dagger. She notices Tenma staring and confronts him directly, preventing any comfortable moment of recognition, then dismisses lengthy introductions as pointless because they only need to finish the job and leave. Tenma recognizes her as Akane Hoshimori, startling the dagger user by speaking her undisclosed name. He privately credits Kyosuke with including at least one decent person among this volatile lineup, because Akane becomes an SSS rank Final 11 member, the phantom thief of the illusory world. In the ruined future, grief and broken promises drove many survivors toward trauma and dangerous eccentricity, and Akane stood among those infamous eccentrics, smiling over a battlefield of fallen enemies. She neither worked nor negotiated, surviving entirely through theft from demons, beasts, and humans alike, with desperate refugees receiving no exemption, hardly saintly, yet still preferable to two future killers. Tenma finally introduces himself as a D-rank hunter who fights with both swords and spears, and Masayoshi ends the introductions, cheerfully suggesting they stop talking and enter the dungeon. A circular golden-black gate blazes open against the mountain landscape, marking their expedition's true beginning, and Tenma crosses its luminous boundary as the system confirms entry into the special dungeon. The gate verifies every member satisfies its D rank or lower requirement, then transports the full party inside, where the sudden environment catches Tenma's attention before he can finish identifying what surrounds them. A merciless desert stretches beneath a blazing sun, replacing the cool green mountains without ceremony, and Akane and Jin immediately wilt from the heat while Masayoshi searches his supplied inventory. Their leader produces magic ice cool packs, practical preparation that instantly becomes the party's favorite spell. Revealing Kyosuke supplied advanced intelligence and placed Masayoshi in command of the expedition. Cooling magic revives the struggling hunters, but Masayoshi orders everyone forward with their guard raised, and the four cross the empty dunes in formation, following their shield-bearing leader through the heat. Tenma suddenly tells the others to stop, catching 3 skeptical looks before danger becomes visible, because level 10 perception detects a magical beast hidden somewhere ahead beneath the desert terrain. Masayoshi sees nothing in the exposed dunes and openly doubts the warning from behind him, then advances with shield and axe ready, promising to block anything while demanding everyone follow. The sand erupts exactly as Tenma warned, revealing a huge red-eyed scorpion beneath the party's path, followed by an entire swarm bursting from the dunes while Masayoshi acknowledges Tenma's sharp detection. He plants himself before the scorpions and orders everyone behind him, finally performing his assigned role, then activates level 5 Taunt, challenging the swarm while green energy floods his shield and body. Every scorpion redirects toward Masayoshi, converging from multiple angles as the provocation takes complete effect. But his shield projects a broad green barrier that absorbs their combined assault without breaking formation. Behind that defense, Jin charges concentrated lightning and warns everyone to dodge the incoming strike, firing a narrow blue beam through the packed scorpions while Akane clears its path. The lightning detonates across the swarm in a violent blue blast, scattering sand and armored bodies, and Akane rushes through the electrical aftermath with both curved daggers already drawn. She spins between the airborne scorpions, carving several apart with precise intersecting slashes, leaving severed claws, tails, and bodies crashing harmlessly back into the desert around them. Masayoshi calls the display impressive, while Akane dismisses her own efficient massacre as nothing special, and Tenma applauds the remarkably solid team, privately noting they have left him no work. Masayoshi notices his inactivity and asks him to contribute, forcing the spectator onto today's payroll, so Tenma steps forward and prepares to act just as the sand begins trembling again. Akane senses something approaching and shouts a warning, interrupting Tenma before he can respond. A colossal black pincer erupts around her, snapping shut before the others can intervene, and the monster bursts fully from beneath them, lifting Akane while blasting everyone else backward. The gigantic armored centipede towers above Masayoshi, roaring as Akane remains trapped inside one claw. Masayoshi desperately reactivates level 5 Taunt, but the centipede's enormous level advantage makes it completely ineffective, while Tenma braces against the disturbed sand and prepares to move before Akane is crushed. The danger recalls a night in the ruined future, inside a refugee camp lit by fire, when the older Tenma quietly woke Kyoya and pulled him away from the sleeping survivors. He asked his nephew to follow silently and ensure nobody noticed their secret nighttime excursion, then began digging a large hole, leaving the confused young man questioning the sudden excavation. Instead of explaining, Tenma simply directed Kyoya's attention toward whatever he had buried below. The pit contained a carefully hidden pack filled with scarce snacks, juice, and canned drinks, provisions Tenma had worked hard to gather because he wanted to give them specifically to Kyoya. He explains the reason plainly. Today is his nephew's birthday, even in their collapsing world. Kyoya breaks into grateful tears, overwhelmed that his uncle remembered and protected something almost normal. Tenma tells him to eat everything secretly, preventing the camp from discovering their precious private celebration. Before Kyoya can enjoy it, a sudden blur slams through the quiet scene and cuts him off. A hooded pink-haired thief appears beside the fallen boy, already moving toward the hidden provisions, and the older Tenma recognizes her as Hoshimori, shouting her name in furious disbelief. Akane flashes past him at extreme speed, prioritizing the birthday stash over any polite explanation, and knocks Tenma backward before he can stop a robbery with exceptionally personal timing. She leaves both uncle and nephew sprawled beside the pit, then calmly inspects her stolen haul. Akane selects a red can and opens it immediately, treating the captured provisions as settled property, then drinks without hesitation, completing the petty theft that made her impossible for Tenma to forget. After Akane departs, only empty containers and scattered wrappers remain from Kyoya's stolen birthday celebration, leaving nephew and uncle staring at the ruined gift while the older Tenma curses helplessly. Those snacks were treasure in the ruined world, and Akane's cold, unapologetic face remains unforgettable. Back in the dungeon, she hangs upside down inside the monster's pincer and screams for help, while Tenma briefly thinks the situation serves her right, collecting an old debt without touching her. The giant centipede looms over Masayoshi and Jin, keeping Akane trapped as it prepares another attack, and Tenma orders Masayoshi to raise his shield, abruptly taking control when Taunt cannot. He sprints directly toward the monster while the tank braces beneath its descending armored limb, which crashes onto Masayoshi's shield as Tenma launches high above the towering centipede. He summons the glowing spear of retrieval into his hand, lining up the monster from above, and recalls that a giant centipede's weak point lies directly in its armored head. Activating throw level 11, Tenma hurls the spear downward with maximum force and precision, blasting through the head in a blue column that shatters the centipede's armored body apart. Severed plates, limbs, and tail segments crash into the sand as the enormous monster collapses, while the freed Akane lands face first in the debris, surviving with considerably less dignity than expected. Jin and Masayoshi stare at Tenma's hidden power, openly questioning how he concealed such strength. Tenma offers no explanation because another deep vibration beneath the desert immediately captures his attention, and Akane feels the ground trembling again as loose sand begins jumping around the party. The entire impact crater shudders violently, signaling that destroying the centipede has not ended the danger. Then a massive wall of sand erupts around all four hunters as something rises from below. The rising sand becomes an antlion pit, dragging the party toward its rapidly collapsing center, and Akane slides backward first, loudly questioning why every desert disaster keeps selecting her. Tenma calls it karmic retribution from the future, enjoying repayment delivered without any personal effort. From a rocky ledge, two suited hunters observe the struggling party and confirm another guild arrived first, discussing orders to avoid conflict, find an opening, and quietly secure the demonic spring. A third man interrupts from nearby, telling the cautious pair they misunderstood their master's command, because he interprets quiet removal as permission to kill rivals over the slightest obstruction. Riku Hamuro of the villain guild Black Knot mocks caution, refusing to waste such an opportunity, while Koketsu is introduced as one of the country's leading mid-sized guilds with a respectable exterior, concealing villain hunters responsible for robbery, arson, and murder beneath that polished public reputation. At Koketsu's modern headquarters, the expedition's secret agenda reaches the leadership far from the desert, where an aide reports Riku entered the dungeon and confirmed another guild is already inside. The seated leader asks whether proper instructions were delivered, making his preferred solution unmistakably ominous, and Hiroki Igarashi orders his people to kill anyone interfering with the mission. His nervous subordinate confirms the command, choosing obedience over any objection to the escalation. The aide leaves the spacious office, closing the doors and abandoning Igarashi to his thoughts, while the Koketsu leader remains motionless behind his desk, tension building beneath his controlled exterior. He suddenly smashes the desk in fury, unable to accept an unknown guild discovering this dungeon. Igarashi had planned to gather elite D ranks carefully and conquer it without outside interference, because losing the demonic energy source means death at the hands of the terrifying person above him. Riku's four-man group watches the expedition below from its rocky vantage point, remaining hidden. Riku calls them crazy for sparing targets when permission to kill has already been granted. The brown-haired leader asserts his authority and warns Riku against causing any trouble. Riku answers by clamping one hand over the leader's face, negotiations close ahead of schedule. He drives the leader headfirst into the ground, making his opinion on hierarchy painfully clear. The injured leader lies bleeding, while Riku turns his attention toward the remaining hunters. Riku strikes the ponytailed hunter next, scattering blood as another teammate recoils in alarm. When challenged, Riku orders all three hunters to fight the expedition and die immediately. Asked why, he replies that killing people requires no reason in the first place. For Riku, the explanation is brutally simple. He does it because violence entertains him. The ponytailed hunter collapses backwards, staring up at Riku with undisguised terror. Riku savors that expression, explaining that anger is already giving way to fear. He asks whether his diagnosis is wrong, and the terrified hunter answers with a scream. Riku stands above the battered group, completely comfortable with the chaos he created. With his three unwilling companions properly motivated, Riku announces the coming fight is 4-on-4. The expedition continues across Luth Desert, while Riku eagerly imagines their reactions to his ambush. Night falls within 30 minutes, another special dungeon feature, and the party camps around a fire. Masayoshi dreams of founding an unbound independent guild and invites the others to join someday. The sales pitch collapses under future receipts. His free guild commits tyranny and beats a junior to death. Jin politely passes on Masayoshi's invitation, saying he has other things he wants to pursue. Tenma knows Jin's real future pursuit is killing innocent civilians with electric shocks. Akane also declines, explaining that guild membership holds no interest for her. Instead, she dreams of joining the Hunter Association and protecting citizens through her own strength. Her heroic ambition surprises Tenma, who remembers her future reputation as a thief. He leaves the campfire to scout the surrounding area while the others remain behind. Morning may never arrive at this pace, so waiting idly is not a workable strategy. Memory search recalls Igarashi revealing that the demonic energy source lies inside a nearby pyramid. Tenma activates level 10 perception, earning significant experience as he scans the dark terrain. That enhanced awareness catches someone approaching from behind before they can surprise him. He instantly catches and turns the intruder, leaving Akane yelping from the abrupt counter. Recognizing her, Tenma asks how she discovered his supposedly secret departure from camp. Akane distrusted the other two and followed because staying beside him felt safer. Tenma realizes her crisis perception should make locating the demonic energy source considerably easier. He tells Akane to follow, though she still has no idea where they are heading. Before the pyramid, Tenma claims it contains what she loves most, despite meeting her today. Akane confirms her crisis perception marks the place as dangerous, despite her earlier monster mishaps. Blaming poor condition for those incidents, she accepts his assurance that following him will pay off. Tenma proceeds toward the pyramid without further explanation, leaving Akane to decide whether she trusts him. She notices he is handsome, remembers his rescue, and decides to trust him for now. Akane hurries after him, loudly warning that she will not forgive any disappointment outcome. Tenma deduces crisis perception stays silent whenever the system knows he will keep Akane safe. Inside the narrow pyramid corridor, Akane says her ominous feeling has steadily intensified. Then the warning abruptly vanishes, confusing her just as the passage appears harmless. Tenma advises following quietly, while Akane insists her senses detected something nearby. He calmly repeats that she should follow, and his perception gains another surge of experience. Perception reaches level 11, unlocking partial access to system messages received by party members. Akane dashes ahead, promising to demonstrate the allegedly impressive power of crisis perception. She pauses at the next corridor and confidently declares that everything appears safe. A massive rolling boulder immediately audits that confidence, sending Akane sprinting back down the corridor. While she screams for him to run, Tenma remains planted directly before the approaching trap. One straight-line slash cleaves through the boulder, scattering its shattered mass around him. Akane asks whether he is seriously only D rank after witnessing that effortless destruction. Activating level 11 perception, Tenma detects something hidden beneath the cracked stone floor. He stamps once, collapsing the weakened ground and exposing a concealed route below. Akane proudly calls it her shortcut, while privately wondering what kind of hunter accompanies her. The pair descends a long staircase into the deeper levels of the silent pyramid. Reaching a vast chamber, Akane stares upward and wonders whether they found its boss. A colossal sphinx waits there, matching Igarashi's memory of where the demonic energy source is held. The Sphinx welcomes the desert challengers and announces their trial of the sandstorm. 10 glowing magic circles ignite around a stone sarcophagus, beginning the chamber's mysterious test. A violent red sandstorm erupts throughout the chamber, swallowing the floor in searing turbulence. Tenma tells Akane they must climb onto the Sphinx before the storm overwhelms them. Both leap through the blazing currents, aiming directly for the colossal statue's broad back. They land safely atop it, keeping above the worst of the churning storm. Akane expects a survival test, but Tenma intends to clear the trial his own way. His one-word instruction is stealing, which earns an immediate and deeply suspicious protest. Tenma says she should perform the skill she knows better than anything else. He catches Akane's wrist before she can avoid the assignment or retreat from him. He produces the whole party's missing wallets. The prosecution rests before the sandstorm does. Exposed, Akane admits having steal but refuses to obey simply because he knows her secret. The Sphinx's eyes flare red, signaling that the trial is escalating beneath them. The surrounding sandstorm surges upward with explosive force, engulfing their elevated position. Tenma orders Akane to hurry before the storm leaves them no room to act. He tells her that survival now requires stealing directly from the Sphinx itself. Akane reluctantly activates absolute pillage, reaching into the statue's reward while regretting this partnership. Tenma unleashes straight line slash through the storm, shielding her attempt from its crushing pressure. Perception reveals absolute pillage level 4, stealing the Sphinx's reward item through the system. Tenma recognizes its absurd potential. Akane can steal rewards directly from completed dungeon trials. The Sphinx begins crumbling mid-trial, then desperately launches its ancient four-legged riddle anyway. Its enormous stone body continues breaking apart while Tenma and Akane brace atop the shaking remains. Akane defends absolute pillage, arguing that stealing is heroic whenever she uses it for good. The defeated trial begins distributing rewards, showering her with light before a second test can start. Gold and treasure flood the chamber, including one compact device holding a violet crystal. The system identifies that unusual device as the sought-after source of demonic energy. Tenma immediately claims it, startling Akane with his knowledge of the hidden objective. She realizes his suspicious behavior always pointed toward obtaining this demonic energy source. He postpones explanations, requesting only the device while offering Akane every remaining treasure. Her offended question lasts until she processes the mountain of gold. Principals meet favorable accounting. The first source completes 1/3 of limit break and grants 1 hour of talent supplement. Tenma tosses the recovered device upward, preparing Soul Eater to consume its concentrated energy. Blue power erupts as the sword draws every trace of demonic energy from the shattered container. Soul Eater gains another 3 attack power, reaching 30 base plus 9 absorbed power. When Akane asks how he knew her skill, Tenma claims he can inspect others' abilities. Level 11 Perception feels extremely useful. He can practically smell the money surrounding this thief. After collecting their rewards, both return through the dark desert to the party's campsite. Masayoshi immediately questions why they disappeared together so late, irritating Akane with his tone. Tenma calls it life advice, and Akane awkwardly supports that very incomplete cover story. Masayoshi accepts their help but orders everyone to stop acting independently without his permission. At dawn, he restates their objective: clear the dungeon and obtain the Jewel of Aldoria. The reunited 4-person expedition enters the pyramid together, moving deeper without wasting more time. Mummy monsters swarm the corridor near the boss chamber, forming a dense barrier before the party. With 357 points already stored, Tenma draws his charged spear and calls this farming time. One level 11 throw pierces 6 mummies in a line, earning another 42 points. Masayoshi realizes Tetsuma excels with both sword and spear, then imagines profiting from recruiting him. He dreams of adding such strength to his future guild until Tenma tells him to watch ahead. Akane doubts Tenma is D rank, but he notes the restricted gate itself verified his classification. The floor ahead rises ominously, prompting the party to wonder whether the boss has appeared. Stone slabs burst upward as something enormous forces its way through the chamber floor. A towering sand golem emerges, its glowing eyes fixed on the 4 hunters below. Masayoshi confidently activates Provocation, expecting his familiar taunting skill to trivialize the encounter. He braces behind his massive shield as a green defensive barrier surrounds him. The golem's descending fist crushes into that defense with enough force to shatter the floor. Masayoshi is hurled backward and lands hard, his shield and axe scattered beside him. Jin realizes the golem ignored Provocation entirely, leaving their tank unable to control its target. The monster charges straight toward Jin, abandoning the fallen Masayoshi without hesitation. Jin orders everyone back and releases a concentrated blue lightning beam at point-blank range. The blast strikes the golem's torso, flooding its stone body with crackling blue energy. Jin pours more power into the attack, screaming as the beam expands against his target. The golem punches through the lightning and detonates the floor beneath another overwhelming impact. Akane watches in disbelief as the sand golem remains standing after Jin's strongest barrage. Tenma suspects leaked demonic energy strengthened this golem far beyond normal D-rank limits. He steadies Akane and proposes repeating their successful Sphinx strategy against the new boss. The golem pounds the chamber floor again, launching stone and sand through the air. Tenma activates level 11 Perception, reading the monster's movement through the flying debris. Level 11 Agility carries him between multiple impacts while he circles toward an opening. He launches the Spear of Retrieval into the golem, testing the structure beneath its sand. Tenma identifies the buried core as the creature's true body, separate from its outer mass. Because the sand continually regenerates, he activates Soul Release to destroy everything in one blow. His amplified straight line tears across the golem's entire body in a brilliant blue arc. The sand shell explodes outward, exposing the glowing orange core within the scattered mass. Before regeneration begins, Tenma urgently calls Akane forward to complete their planned maneuver. He identifies the core as her target and orders her to steal it immediately. Akane activates level 4 Absolute Pillage, reaching directly toward the exposed orange core. Since mana engineering powers the golem, stealing its ownership should shut the construct down. Instead, Pillage fails because the target's power overwhelmingly exceeds Akane's current strength. The regenerated golem looms directly over her, turning the failed theft into immediate danger. Akane asks what she should do. Tenma gives the only useful answer: run. They sprint across the chamber together while the fully restored golem barrels after them. Tenma combines level 11 strength and throwing, hurling the charged retrieval spear with maximum force. The spear slams into the pursuing golem, buying space between the monster and the fleeing pair. Fighting this powerful enemy makes Talentless Adjustment bloom the super rare weapon change skill at level 1. Weapon Change instantly swaps equipment from his inventory, letting Tenma attack without retrieval delays. Each switch temporarily boosts the newly equipped weapon's destructive power, initially by 3%. A swift straight-line slash cuts through the golem before its next attack can fully descend. The monster recoils with a roar, its newly restored sand body losing another large section. Tenma activates Weapon Change again, replacing his sword with the Spear of Retrieval instantly. Repeated swaps accelerate the super rare skill from level 2 through level 5 almost immediately. At level 5, the switched spear receives a 15% increase in destructive power. Its empowered strike blasts apart another section of the regenerating golem's massive body. Switching back to Soul Eater pushes Weapon Change successively through levels 6, 7, and 8. The next sword attack carries a 24% power increase, crushing deeper toward the core. Another instant swap summons the retrieval spear and raises weapon change through levels 9 and 10. Level 10 now grants 30% destructive power and unlocks an additional skill effect. Switched weapons can be imbued with a small amount of mana, dramatically sharpening the charged spear. He concentrates every accumulated enhancement into one direct thrust at the exposed orange core. The spear pierces through, shattering the core and erupting the entire golem in blue-white energy. The mana engineering golem falls. The system awards 428 points and displays 744 total. Exhausted but standing, Tenma catches his breath while Akane judges the performance not bad. Clearing the dungeon produces its promised reward, the Radiant Jewel of Aldoria. The D++ material contains the soul of a queen who burned away her own life. Akane rushes to find the others, while Tenma privately questions whether saving them is worthwhile. He reasons their recovery items should handle even direct hits from the golem. Perception catches someone nearby, abruptly stopping Akane before she enters the next chamber. Masayoshi lies face down and motionless beside his shield, blood marking the shattered floor. A hidden attacker praises the pair for defeating both the Sphinx and golem alone. Riku appears over their fallen teammates, demanding the demonic energy source while brandishing a bloodied blade. Akane recoils at the brutal scene, finally meeting the danger her instincts had anticipated. She covers her mouth, struggling to contain her shock at the incapacitated hunters. Tenma concludes Igarashi sent these assassins for the source after catching their exhausted teammates off guard. Riku compliments his knowledge and confirms that Koketsu operates as a villain guild. Admitting he holds the source, Tenma openly invites Riku to take it by force. Knowing Riku serves humanity's future traitor, he deliberately pulls the killer's attention toward himself. Riku calls him exhausted, promises to kill him first, and saves Akane for afterward. Instead, Tenma asks Akane whether she can kill the approaching villain herself. She freezes, and he reminds her that this murderer belongs to a villain guild. Her dream of saving the world, he argues, cannot remain perfectly clean forever. Riku enthusiastically accepts the challenge and lunges forward with his curved blade raised. Level 11 Perception reads the incoming slash before its edge can reach Tenma. Agility and Taijutsu activate at level 11, moving him outside the attack's path instantly. Riku continues his spinning assault, but Tenma slips beneath the blade and stays inside striking range. Tenma catches Riku's weapon arm mid-swing, converting the reckless charge into a Taijutsu opening. He pivots beneath the attacker and lifts him completely off balance by the captured wrist. One clean throw sends Riku crashing headfirst across the chamber floor, blade flying wide. Furious and bloodied, Riku scrambles up, threatening to cut Tenma into pieces. Suspecting Riku also killed the other Koketsu operatives, Tenma decides leaving him alive is impossible. Blue energy gathers around his weapon as he prepares a decisive counter before Riku recovers. Straight line slash tears through Riku in one overwhelming sweep, ending the villain's attack instantly. Tenma calmly dismisses the remaining energy and returns his weapon after the finishing strike. Akane protests that Riku could be subdued, but Tenma cites Masayoshi and Jin's defenseless murders. Though both might have become villains later, they were still innocent hunters in this timeline. Their deaths leave Tenma wondering whether staying near him could have changed their futures. With nothing left inside the chamber, he tells Akane their dungeon mission is finished. Outside the gate, two gray-suited representatives wait beside vehicles under the Mountain Knight. They approach the returning pair and confirm that the expedition has completed its assignment. The spokesman thanks them, explaining he came because Kyosuke Sengoku is currently overseas. Tenma presents the recovered Jewel of Aldoria so the representative can verify their reward objective. After confirming its authenticity, the representative asks why the other expedition members are absent. Tenma reports that both died during the raid, and the representative accepts the grim answer. Once the handoff ends, another blue system window opens before Tenma in the darkness. The D-rank limit break remains 1/3 complete, leaving 2 demonic energy sources to recover. With almost no information on the remaining sources, Tenma concludes Kyosuke's network will be crucial. Before they separate, Akane offers him a green locked box as a thank you gift. She credits his repeated rescues and admits the keyless box should still sell well. Tenma silently accepts the unexpected gesture from someone remembered as the future's greatest thief. Back home, he sits on his bed and finally inspects Akane's mysterious reward. The system identifies a locked C+ unknown storage box containing one random item. Receiving something valuable from the future Phantom Thief leaves him quietly amused by this timeline. Then he remembers another reward already waiting inside his inventory for exactly this situation. Gondo's Mana Crystal key is C rank, making it perfectly compatible with the C+ box's lock. The ornate key enters the golden mechanism, and the sealed lid finally releases. Brilliant red-white light floods from the open box as its random item materializes. A faceted crimson bottle rises from the glow, initially resembling an ordinary potion. It is red blood of the unicorn, capable of awakening an item's hidden power. Tenma chooses the sealed ring of defense once used by a Demon Legion commander. The growth item remains unable to reveal its true ability while that seal persists. With the necessary catalyst finally obtained, he pours the unicorn blood directly onto the ring. Red energy erupts as the potion restores its true form and releases the unique item's seal. Ring of Defense evolves into the super unique growth item called Ring of Invincibility. Elsewhere, loud laughter echoes from a brightly lit apartment high above the city. At the Shirogane home, Yuna gleefully tells her older sister that Yuka was dumped. Yuna then complains that the man who requested her number still has not contacted her. Yuki confirms he predicted and cleared the irregular gate, while Yuna admits their party stood no chance without him. Privately, Yuna remembers they nearly died but stays quiet, knowing Yuki would make an enormous issue of it. Even while complaining, Yuna's deepening blush betrays how personally she has taken the silence. Yuki reminds her that Silverwing's hunter selection test will be held in 1 week. She casually suggests Yuna call the impressive hunter, immediately catching her younger sister off guard. Yuki even offers to pay for dinner, proposing that the three of them meet together. Flustered, Yuna absolutely refuses to call him and demands to know why Yuki would attend. Yuki answers without hesitation. She intends to scout him for the Silver Wing Guild. Meanwhile, Tenma arrives in the equipment district and approaches a familiar craftsman's building. Inside, he notes nothing has changed, matching the place exactly as he remembers it. Before browsing, he stops to check a newly arrived notification on his phone. Sengoku has deposited 12 million yen, Tenma's largest hunter payday from the Clear Reward and Mana Crystal sale. Yet a decent equipment set here still costs more, so 12 million barely reaches the starting line. A creditor's furious demands for repayment interrupt his shopping thoughts and draw his attention nearby. The stocky creditor stands over a fallen craftsman, dismissing yet another promise that repayment is coming. Tenma identifies the victim as a local craftsman by his clothing, while the frightened man continues pleading. One closer look stops Tenma cold. The indebted craftsman is someone he recognizes. Declaring conversation useless, the creditor raises his wooden club and threatens to finish matters today. Before collection turns into a beating, Tenma rests one hand on the creditor's shoulder. Tenma politely asks for a moment, while the irritated creditor demands his identity and connection to the craftsman. Tenma's reply skips introductions entirely. A single punch sends the creditor airborne before he can swing. The creditor crashes into a nearby stone monument, his wooden club spinning uselessly through the air. Tenma crouches beside the stunned craftsman, who asks whether his unexpected rescuer already knows him. In the ruined future, this man becomes its sole craftsman, creating outrageously powerful broken items. He is Koji Mochizuki, someone every hunter benefits from keeping on good terms with. Tenma offers Koji a hand, knowing only he can craft growth-type items anywhere in the country.